Hey everyone, welcome to a very special episode of the podcast. Something a little bit different. I'm joined by a very special guest, fellow Wexford man, conspiracy theory aficionado, among many more things, which I'm sure we'll get into. Gordo from those conspiracy guys.
Hey, what's the crack?
How are you, brother?
Very good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Feeling the
It
vibes?
feels
Feeling the.
like it feels like having a conversation with someone I've known for the last 30 years.
That's what joined friends join together in murder. That's how it works, man. You find that thing, and you're just like, sometimes it's sport, sometimes it's, you know, a movie. We're like, yeah, a cunt that fucking killed and ate his friend. That's the.
Right? I have an unhealthy obsession with mysterious disappearances and shit like that. I know, and it's awful, right? But like I was saying to you before,
Larry Murphy syndrome.
so funny because like I done a huge uh, went down the rabbit hole of that whole like Ireland's vanishing triangle thing, and
Yeah, man, it's a real thing.
some of that shit's a bit too close to home.
Like literally, like up the
Yeah.
rocks.
Yep.
Yeah.
And like I don't know, I don't know what it is about it that like fascinates me so much about stuff like that. Like I'm reading the Madeline McCann book at the minute. I can't remember the two authors. It's the owl fella and the one that's in the documentary on Netflix. Their book.
Um, the Portuguese name. Fuck, I wasn't ready for the. I'm trying to go, Rolodex the name now. I haven't got it. But yeah, the fact that you would wonder about people disappearing, like I think it's the compulsion of the right-minded human, or the you know, in law, like they say, in the eyes of right-minded people. So like if you're a normal person who would never think about murdering somebody, or what it'd be like to hold your hands out and, like, actually choke the life, like see the life leave somebody's
Yeah.
eyes, like you would still. I feel it's like looking at stuff like Jackass, do you know, like that new Jackass movie. I know loads of men in their late 40s who would look at that movie because they were smoking joints in like 1999, watching it on MTV in their heyday, going like, man, we fucking totally do that, man. That's fucking hilarious. Look at that shit. He put a firework up his hole and he set it on fire. That's hilarious, right? And now they're in their late 40s going, how the fuck can anybody ever do that? It's the fascination of going like, somebody else has had an experience that I haven't had, and I would love to know what that would be like without having to physically
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
emotionally experience it myself. It's why people watch horror movies. It's why people watch fucking, I don't know, Tom Cruise films where they're like, oh man, I wonder what it'd be like to be a cunt all the time. Do you know?
And that's probably why I watch horror movies and all as well. I put myself in that scenario. And Jackass is actually a funny one because I think that there's definitely heaps of lads out there who, had their whole I guess their own idea of like, oh yeah, Jack Garris, like go out and jump off me man's
Of
shade,
course.
and yeah,
I
there's like the
remember. I
Dirty
remember.
Sanchez spin-offs and all that stuff that
It's
came
now
out.
at urban legend status. But a lad in Wexford town, who shall not be named, jumped off a bush and tore his scrotum open, and his fucking balls came out. And all. I know you know the man I'm talking about. Like that was an urban legend because fucking cunts would be doing that. There's fellas that I know. Some of the best musicians I ever met in my life. There were lads that used to be running around fucking around Redmond Park doing fucking skate tricks and shit, like jumping on the railing and having going up into the meaty part of your arse, and you're like, why did you think that you could do that? And they're like, I don't know, I just thought I could. It's like, oh, we should have filmed it. We have no cameras, you know. So it's that kind of thing. I think of like, I know why I think about those people. I'm like, what would be going on in the person's head who's like in the boot of the car? Do you know what would if that happened to
Yeah,
you? Would you be able to get out of it? If you were looking at a horror movie and there's somebody chasing, so like a killer chasing somebody around the house, like you'd never run up the stairs. You're out the door. You're out the door into a car. You get the car keys. Where are the car keys kept? You know, you need to know your exfiltration routes out of the place. Like you never go upstairs. Like that's you're signing your debt warrant. You know, these kind of preparation things. But like when you're being driven to the Wicklow Mountains by Larry Murphy, what do you
I shouldn't
say?
be laughing, but
What? But that's what I mean. You're in the back of the car. You're in the boot of the car. You're fucking bound and gagged, and you have like a certain amount of it. Like you're not going to not beg for your life. You're not going to not try and bargain your way out of it by going, listen, there's no need to kill me and rape me. Just like rape me and I'd be into it or whatever, and you can just like let me go. Like please, like don't kill me. And it's like you bargain, and then there's like a guilt thing of like, oh, I have kids or I have family who love me, or I've this, and like there's a science behind all that stuff, you know, where people will offer all these things, and then they start to bargain, and then they start to try and humanize themselves. So there's like a thing you're supposed to do, you know, if you're ever faced with somebody who has a gun in your face, or they're going to stab you, or it's like a maniacal killer or a robber or someone, you know, that you're supposed to just start naming off things that humanize you, you know, my name is Gordon. I've got two brothers. I used to be like a little chubby when I was a kid, and it made me feel weird. You know, I fucking like to stick my dick on the hot bonnet of a car on a summer's day. Don't you? Like it's these kind of things that you have to, you know, you're saying like you know, your parents' names, your brothers' names, what they like to do, the hobbies they like to do, and it does something in the mind of the killer that makes them see you as a person again. Because obviously, like you get those Ted Bundy shark eyes, and they just see you as like an object or a conquest, or
yeah,
like they objectify you or dehumanize you. So you just have to like rehumanize yourself in their mind, and then by and large, like that seems to work. You know, for people that have got away from serial killers or murderers, it's wondering what's going on, like just in the moments before, because everyone's like, what, how am I going to die and why, and you know, and will I be able to put up a fight? Anyone that's ever got a box in the head and never hit them back, we've all had those nights when we're lying on our cold pillow, tossing and turning with the fucking Conor McGregor moves we should have had if we only knew that the
yeah,
punch was coming, you know. And Mike Tyson's like, yeah, sure, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. Like, that's true, but like the things you do after, you think, oh man, that had been me, man. I would fucking block him like that and fucking put him in a fucking Kimura and fucking put him in an arm lock and like fucking have him in a triangle choke and I do all that and he'd be like, oh, crying for his ma. Like, no, you wouldn't have done any of that. You would have hit the ground, rolled up in the ball, and been like, please don't hit me, please don't hit me. But I
yeah.
think that's why maybe people obsess about these things, because they're like, what would you do?
And it is not at all related to anything that we're going to talk about over the next hour, probably. But
Oh, I,
and I
I
don't
have some
know,
stuff to say, because that best friend got fucking killed in it. And you would wonder,
I'm
like, oh man, why did I make friends with this cunt?
it.
Spoiler alert.
Well, yeah, that's because I was just going to say, I was like, the basis of this is a dude who becomes obsessed with a horror film and ends up murdering his mate and drinking his blood and eating bits of his brain.
Yeah. I mean, you could have just got a
Like,
takeaway, like,
when you think about that, like when you actually think about that, like envision one of your, especially right if you're a big mad fucking weirdo and you have one friend. I can't imagine the thought process of, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna bash his head in.
it's not as if the writing wasn't on the wall for this motherfucker anyway.
I
But
Yeah, and I didn't realize how much writing was on the fucking wall.
in blood.
Yeah, because when I went looking at this, I didn't realize the first time I started to kind of dive into the backstory of this fella, and then when I started to pull the thread, it went on and on and on. I was like, wait a second now, his ma is on record saying, well, yeah, I always knew he was a bit weird, like, but he was a loving boy, but he used to be in his room, locked in it, screaming, roaring every night, rocking back and forth, killing heaps of animals and all, and but yeah, he was a lovely boy though.
And you're like, bitch, have you never watched a fucking crime documentary? Like, that's like, you have as many red flags as Chinese New Year. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
What do you do in that situation though? As a like, both of us are parents to young kids. If faced, God forbid, with that situation, like I was trying to put myself in this position and be like, what the fuck would I do if my kid was literally that mental?
I would probably, I don't know, man. Like, it's kind of a stigma, like, to take a child to be assessed for anything, right? for years and years, and then there's been a spate in the last, I dare say, like 10, to make it a round number, 10 years of possibly over assessment, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you was a kid you think is a murderer, or it could be a murderer's killing small animals, you'd be bringing it for some serious therapy, like wondering like what's going on. And without speaking out of school, like I don't want to be telling tales on anybody, but we have a few different friends of our family, me and Claire, and they're having not like murderous behavior from their younger teenage children, but definitely like disturbing slash disturbed behavior, like emotionally unstable, anxiety ridden, school refusing, deep internet diving into potentially traumatic or unsavory content. That seems to be a compulsion, like porn or gore, you know. And the emotional fallout, psychological fallout from that tends to lean towards like disassociation. The effects of trauma can present themselves as symptoms of conditions like ADHD or autism, believe it or believe it not. And a lot of people then end up going, well, I have all these ADHD symptoms because I'm watching loads of TikToks, and TikTok is telling me I have ADHD. I don't know if you've ever been on TikTok in the last year, but it seems to be fucking, you know, willy-nilly diagnosing motherfuckers of shit. And like you have all these things like inattention, you know, emotional dysregulation, disassociation,
Mm-hmm.
you know, brain fog, analysis paralysis, decision making incapabilities, fucking like loads of these. You know, look down the 25 things of ADHD, and you'll mark like 22 of them off. If you've had like a traumatic experience in the last 5 to 10 years, it presents itself as those things. So people are going in going, I think of ADHD, and the doctors in America are going, yeah, here's a load of Adderall, it should go away now in a while. You also might grind your teeth down to stumps, you know, because it's meth. And they're giving this shit to kids because kids are coming, having trauma, something happened, it's not properly emotionally dealt with, and then they exhibit, you know, symptoms of emotional and psychological dysregulation or inability to regulate. And then in order, instead of like going in and dealing with that in some kind of like considered therapy, like a long-term treatment option, they give a short-term treatment option, which is medicine. And sometimes that's only masking the outward symptoms, but not solving the inner problem. And it ends up being like a permanent solution to a temporary issue. And
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I
the
mean,
most permanent solution to a temporary issue is suicide. And that happens a lot with these kids that end up having this kind of stuff. So they either kill somebody or kill themselves. So if you have somebody who's completely troubled, like it's going to go one way or the other. Something's got to give, and that's the most extreme thing a human can do to another human, or to themselves, indeed. So, like, you know,
yeah. I mean, even the way you've explained that there, and it's not a not you weren't explaining it in the way of specific to this case, but it's kind of crazy to think about what you just said, and then just in this one specific case alone, all of those factors were hit. Like, I mean,
I can name
he
you
was
10 cases.
diagnosed like,
Same.
yeah, like antisocial personality disorder, dissocial personality disorder, paranoid schizophrenia. He ends up murdering his mate, doing a lot of mad shit to him, hallucinating, ends up committing suicide.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like check, 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 check.
Self harm doesn't have to just be like, you know, that bird in 6 Feet Under, where she's like up in a room cutting her arms with razor blades. Like that's self harm. Loads of stuff. Like self
Yeah.
harm doesn't is not romantic. It's not like in The Craft, you know, where they or in fucking, what was that TV show? Fucking, where she had that little box and it had all the little needles. And the movie The Secretary. Did you ever watch that movie with
Um,
Maggie Gyllenhaal?
um, that's gonna irk me now.
Yeah, The Secretary, where she's like a She's a sub and a dom sub, like
Hmm.
a sadomasochistic sexual relationship, and he ends up being a secretary for this guy who's, a dom personality, and he dominates her sexually, and she loves it. But up until that, like, she was a self harmer, and she had, like, a box full of different shaped pins and needles and little blades and little things, and she'd work on little patches of her thighs or little patches on her upper arm, so it couldn't be seen, as covered by, like, all of this methodical, that's what the public image of what self harm is. It's like, no, man.
But
Overeating, undereating, refusing yourself sleeping too much, making bad decisions, saying no to social occasions, fucking, not taking care of yourself, not washing, not shaving, not, dressing in clothes that you feel comfortable in, or, not being with, like, purposely make a decision to associate yourself with people who make you feel poor about yourself. They're all fucking, that's all self-harm. It's just it's romanticized into, like, blades and blood, when really, like, the little things we do every day have an effect,
yeah, yeah, it's true, and it's something I don't think that gets talked about enough. But like, it often makes me wonder, because I've definitely partaken in some of those probably lesser, I guess, like mad physical, like cutting my skin or anything like that. Um, it just makes me wonder when I see, a little bit off topic. I'm sure you've probably heard of the website FetLife,
Oh,
right? So it's
is it
like
something I can look up right now and that it wouldn't put me off?
yeah, it's some sort of, like, I don't really know the ins and outs of it. Some sort of like fetish fucking website
Ah,
thingy, right?
yeah. I'm already a
Very,
member. It seems I've already been logged in automatically or something.
all the
No, I'm only
links are
messing. I'm only
purple.
messing. I'm very vanilla. I'm very vanilla.
um, but how it came on my radar, not because I had an account or anything.
I
Um,
just love coming on radars and just going around everyone's satellite dishes, just blowing me load.
but someone, the usual, I suppose, maybe it's a very Irish thing, and a Wexford thing as well. Someone fucking must have known that someone was into something, and one of the boys is on that, and then everyone makes accounts so they can go and look and see who's in it from town and all. And I can't remember now anyway, not that I would fucking say the name or anything, but I can't remember specifics or anything. But some chick from town here anyway was on it, and like a lot of mad stuff like you were talking about, like all these like sewing needles and all, and like put in all these like mad weird patterns on her legs and all. And she had pictures of them up on her profile, like, and she was like, I'm mad into like having the tits boxed off me. And it's just, I don't know, man. I just can't relate at all. It's just,
But like finds like, Aaron, like finds like, and there's some people who look at that and go, I can't understand why you would want to put your dick into a vice grips, or why you would want to have, why if it's not for just fucking cash remuneration, why you would want to sit on a dildo that's the size of a 2 liter bottle of Coke and, like, ram your fucking gash off it until the whole thing is up there, and then smile about it. Like, I don't understand why anyone would want to damage themselves like that. I don't understand why, but loads of people do. Loads of people do it. Loads of people pay to watch people do it. I suppose money is probably a big answer to a lot of the weirder stuff. But there's people that'll go to groups, group sex, and fucking all these mad things and get into. You don't know what you want until you experience it. You don't know. So for the most part, like, it starts off with an inquisition. You look online and you're like, oh, I kind of like that thing. And then whatever, a term I use on the show a lot is whatever makes the white stuff come out. So most of the time you're watching all these different, pornographic images or videos, and you see something, you're like, oh, that's the thing. What's the thing I type in to make that come back up again the next time? Because obviously, like, you've Bruce Bannered, you've come back down into yourself, and the green is all gone, and you're fucking covered in shame glaze, and you're like, oh, I'll just go back over my history to see what mad shit did I just click on there? What's this thing? What's that thing? And you find you like it, and you like it, and you like it, and you get into it more, and then
I just
hopefully
can't help.
hopefully you'll find somebody that will be willing to share that to you, in real life, or else you're gonna have to pay somebody to do it, because it's something like, fucking, here, I love, eating like a platter of, like, somebody's shits done up like the way the ambassador does it and spoils everybody with the Ferrero Rocher, and then you have to eat it with fucking toothpicks like you're at a christening, eating fucking sausage rolls. Like, some people like that, and sometimes you're gonna have to pay somebody to eat their shit like nuggets, like chicken nuggets,
I
right?
just, I,
But sometimes you find someone who'll do it for free because they love it, and those people stay together forever. There's little
I just,
clues I'm finding out. Do you know that having like upside down pineapples in your house, or having pineapples in your house, that's a key to other. That's a clue to other people who come to visit your house to ask about like swinging. Did you know that?
no, I did not.
Having pampas grass, which is like a big kind of bloom, and it has like white kind of furry uh, foliage. Like it's like the flower of it comes out like a white kind of. It looks like kind of cotton in the wind. Having pampas grass in your garden is like a come hither to other couples to say, come on in. And if you see pineapples or upside down pineapples in the house, like pictures of pineapples, pineapple statues, if you have just like a pineapple, like an ornament, it's kind of a come on to say like, if you're over for dinner for the dinner party, like we won't say come here. So we like to fuck other people's wives and husbands. How are you fixed? But having the pineapple there means they come over and they know what the pineapple means. They're like, so come here, I see the pineapple. What's the fucking crack? Do you just like pineapples? Or they're like, yeah, we love pineapples. I'm like, oh shit. But if they're not like, no, it's what what do you think it means? And it starts that conversation. Like, people find each other, man, you know?
People are so fucked, man. I like I
Fucked.
think about when like you're a young lad and you be fucking. I don't know. I remember going into Tesco and robbing like a fucking Nuts or a Zoo magazine or something off the shelf and going home and sticking the pages together and
Fucking
like
darting it to the wall.
afterwards being like, oh, I should like kill myself and all.
Yeah.
Oh
The
God,
guilt.
no, this is terrible.
Oh man,
What am I doing? And I'd
what
be,
would Gail Porter think of me if she saw me do that to her picture? You know?
and I'm heading down the street with this thing under my hoodie, getting ready to throw it in a bin somewhere, and
Yeah.
then I get rid of it. Then I'm at home like 2 hours later. I'm like, fuck's sake, I'll have to pull the Mickey out myself
Yeah,
now.
where's
Now
that
I'm
magazine? Why they throw it
fuck.
away? Yeah. But that's the thing, and you know, they're telling kids younger and younger now what masturbation is and all, not to be ashamed of it. I'm like, stop telling children about that shit. That's another fucking show for another day. But like for the you will find somebody to share that with concept. Like think about all the like the mad like couples. Like, think about those Columbine lads. Like, those two guys just so happen to be in the same school at the same time, having
Yeah,
the same experience. And it's not the experience of being bullied and outcasts and all that people say. We did an episode on Columbine, and it kind of counteracts that narrative, which I think is reductive and uninformative and almost like propagandist against like alarmist outcast resource, like for people who commit atrocities like that. They're like, oh yeah, it was the weirdo, it was the loner. It's like, nah, man. Weirdo loners probably are happy enough doing their own hobbies or fucking Warhammer 40,000 or something like that. Like, they're not planning on shooting up a school. But the more you talk about it on the news, the more that those people get those ideas, and it just perpetuated like a self-fulfilling prophecy. But those two Columbine lads found each other. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
there are groups of, and I don't want to make everything about this. And Claire always tells me, you know, when we're going to somebody's house, like, for God's sake, don't fucking talk. Like, leave it for at least a half an hour before you mention it. But there's like a paedophile elite network that's connected all around the world, bro. And like, that's one of the riskiest things to bring. It's like, so come here, do you like having sex with children? Like, the riskiest, like, hey, did
yeah.
we ever, maybe if we, you know, um, but those people end up finding each other and like
Yeah, like how do you
collaborating,
broach that subject?
sharing tips and tricks and sharing techniques of manipulation and share, you know, like how do you like how does one look up, like how do you clean up a body without the fucking guards coming to your house and going, come here, why were you searching that shit up? And it's like, I have a podcast, it's about true crime, I swear. It's totally totally legitimate research inquiry. But like, how do you fucking parse that information? Like, do you know, you ask like, what, why are you so fascinated with it? I'm fascinated with wondering how are they able to do that? How can they find each other?
Yeah,
How can you, like, there's clubs on, like, you can get to a subreddit for like pretty much anything, any interest you have. There's somebody else that has that interest, and the internet has brought all these people together. But before that, like, there was massively functional and very populated groups of very uniquely interested people that were all congregating somewhere, like letters. That all know to be like behind the fucking Boker at midnight or whatever on a Wednesday. Like how the fuck do you know? How do you parse that shit? Like, how do you know? I'm not into any of it. But I put out the call of Gondor conspiracy wise and went, like, and the internet just brought thousands and thousands of people to with their ears to my lips, like. So the internet is a great tool for it, but I don't know, man.
Yeah, like, and I suppose the next level, well, at least in my opinion, and it's probably not, maybe it's just me, my opinion on it, like, but those things like that FetLife website I was talking about, look,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's people on there that are probably like, look, I wants to suck on me missus' toes or something like that. That's pretty harmless, I suppose. Not for me, but look, it's harmless, whatever. But then, like, you know, you kind of get that next level of like, look, I want you to fucking stab me while you're riding me. And then I feel like you get into kind of the next tier of like, I didn't realize how many weirdos out there have this obsession with, like, obviously, look, there's Satanists and different things, but like, how many people think that they're vampires and in vampire cults? And like you said, then how are these like, you know, I'd be sitting there thinking to myself, like, Jess, I can't even find a fucking missus.
Yeah,
And it's
I
like,
can't
these
even
motherfuckers
find.
have a vampire cult.
Yeah, I can't even find someone to just like regularly touch my dick. Never mind somebody that let her blood into a cup and let me drink it
Yeah.
as well. Like, yeah, no, it is. It's weird, man. But those people tend to find each other. Like one of the weirdest fetishes that I've seen that I tried to like, and I really tried to do that on the show as well. I tried to put myself in the mind of the people to go like, why, like why? What's the fucking like? Why do you do that? Just to
Mm.
talk about it, to let that idea have a bit of space, like in other people's minds, instead of just going, "Oh, they're fucking weirdos." Like dismissal is like one of the most inhuman things that one person can do to another. Obviously, like rape and murder is very high up there, but like pure dismissal, pure like, you're not even relevant as a person. Like everything you are is just nothing to me. Like that's so
Yeah.
fucking shitty, and it's so easy to do. Rape and murder, a little bit harder, very harsh consequences. Dismissal, blanket dismissal,
Yeah.
very easy to do, and super destructive, especially for kids, right? So, one of the weirder fetishes that I try to put myself in the mind of is, do you know these people that go in and they get it's predominantly I've seen women doing it because it's kind of the way it works. Where they get onto like there's a big cardboard, like a square, and they do this thing like the Vitruvian Man, so the arms and the legs out, and it's like latex rubber, right? And they just have like a hole in it for to breathe, and then there's a hole down by their fanny, and then someone puts a vacuum on it, and then they just like shrink wrap them to this fucking thing like minced beef or like a fucking like a half dozen lamb chops in the freezer in Tesco's, just like stuck to this thing with like latex, and the only thing that's open is a hole down by their fanny, and then they're just like brought into a room, and then they don't know who's at it or and they're just like shrink wrapped, eyes closed, unable to move or even communicate their distaste. Like, I don't want this, no, stop, let me out. And they've agreed beforehand, like whatever happens, and they're just like breathing out through the hole, and then lads would just go at her box like with their dicks or with like dildos and with all, and it's kind of like, oh my god, imagine being confident enough to let your bodily autonomy be given away like with such a potentially extreme consequences from practical strangers. I don't know if they're done in a safe environment, if they know all the people, like like I don't know about you, but like
It's
most
something
of the girls that I've been with are kind of like checking to see if my fingernails are cut and stuff like that. They're quite protective over there. Like, come here, don't go mad now. Don't be going mad. Not that I'd be trying to fucking. I have the stool out like a lion tamer, like the leg of the chair, like. But it's and this girl is just, and many girls I've seen online for research purposes, just like fucking shrink wrapped to the fucking thing, going. have a go. And there's obviously somebody with a compatible fantasy of like, oh, I would love to have sex with a person who is completely like unable to push back or do anything, and she's just like, I just shrink wrapped, like you can't even see her body, like it's just like a little hole cut out down by her fanny. Like,
Like I,
it's one of the weirdest things I've ever seen, and apparently it's not like totally uncommon for that, like that gimpish type of.
yeah, and it's funny that you're talking about that because it's something I often wondered, and not just about even say that specific fetish, but like there's some of them mad fetishes out there where I'm just like, Jesus Christ, like at what point is this just something that you like? Like, I mean, I like fucking Batman comics, right? But I'm not gonna
You just
stuff
like
them up
rubbing
my
them off your
jap
dick or
side, like
what?
yeah, I'm not gonna shove them up my jap side like till I'm
Yeah.
bleeding and like, you know, let everyone kick me up the hole and all with them. Like
Yeah.
it's just a bit but it's funny actually, I at one point I was seeing a
like
chick who
like a papier mâche dildo made out of fucking Batman fucking graphic novels.
I was seeing a chick at one point and I don't remember the ins and outs of it, but something came up about porn or something about something, and it was like one of these fucking. It was all obviously a setup, like it was a shoot. You had this wooden wall with like four holes cut out in it, and it was just four wands arses in them,
Right.
and they were obviously like chained and gagged into them or something, and it was supposed to be like lads could just come in like and just do whatever.
Free
And she's
use,
like,
I think
Jesus,
the
I'd love to
term is.
try that once just to see. And I'm like, what goes on in your like you're one of I'm gonna be on one of those Netflix documentaries if I stay with you. Chopped up, buried in like the mountains or something like that. That's just to me personally, that's just
At the very
bad.
least, to be going to the doctor like 8 to 10 times a year with like
Yeah,
urinary infections. Yeah, like
mad.
that just screams to me like um somebody that wants to relinquish their authority, right? It's the same concept as like the CEO of Fortune 500, like a billionaire. He goes to like a dominatrix and she just dominates and calls him a piece of shit, has him crawling around wearing a nappy and a fucking leather gimp mask with a fucking gag ball, whipping him, standing on his balls with stilettos and fucking, you know, putting a butt plug with a fox's tail on it and being like, you little bitch, and talking shit to him. Because all day, every day, people behave to him as if he's like the king shit of fuck mountain. That he's like, you can't ever
Yeah,
say that to him. Nobody's really ever honest. Nobody ever says that in bad, and like nobody criticizes him because they're afraid of getting fired. And it's very difficult to get an honest interaction when people know kind of who you are you're at that level. Do you know? Which is
yeah,
why all of
yeah,
these motherfuckers end up like going to Epstein's Island, because it's just more and more and more and more extreme interactions, because like the regular interactions don't work anymore. Like I don't know. Imagine if you're Leonardo DiCaprio, like how many faked orgasms you've had to endure, and you never really know like, is this bitch faking because she wants to stick around because I'm like Leonardo DiCaprio, and she
yeah,
has to fake them to make thinking that I want to feel like the big man, when Leonardo really just wants to, you know, do the business right and go go to sleep with a job well done. But he's not really 100% sure if the job is well done or if he's being just lied to because he's Leonardo DiCaprio. Because no one's ever going to say like, "You fucking this is over, man. I'm fed up with this shit." Like no one ever
yeah,
says that to those type of people. So maybe there's a thing where it's like they want an honest interaction. They want like a nameless, faceless thing. Which is why I think like we did an episode not too long ago about a guy called what was his name? Israel Keys. Don't know if you ever heard of him.
yes.
And
Very familiar with him.
his thing was like just going out and just picking random people, random women, not of any ethnicity or height or hair color or age bracket or location or time of day or night or any kind of thing, and all of his crimes. And he could have done dozens, if not hundreds. Um, he's only caught for a couple, and like his thing was just indiscriminate domination. That he just wanted to get somebody, rape them, and kill them. It didn't matter who they were or what. There was no particular taste or menu or anything. In fact, the randomness seemed to be part of it. That like
Yeah,
it
yeah,
didn't matter who you were. Like he could get you at any point, so he's just walking around the whole time, and everybody's a victim of his potentially in his own mind. You're trying to think like, is there not somebody for him? Is there not somebody that will satisfy that thing? Like, it just gets more and more and more and more and more extreme until you reach a point where you're into stuff like illegality. Like, we're going to talk about a lad who's into vampirism, and that seems to be quite extreme, like the bloodletting and the sanguination. But that leads back to something that's a bit more ancient, and it's a bit more, on record as like a psychological disorder for different hundreds of years. There's like loads of history, there's loads of lore. But just like a lad playing out wanting to fuck somebody up and kill him, chop them up in bits, wear their skin as a hat, or make a lamp. Like, there's not that much research done on it. But it's somewhat interesting for me to try and sit in their mind and go like, why? And I think fetish stuff, like you said, that FetLife seems to be a place where those people congregate. It's a safe place next to murder that still lives in the extreme. Do you know?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
putting your personal safety and your, like, all that stuff, like, you're getting into like kind of dangerous interactions, anonymous danger, like being physically intimate with somebody is probably the most like vulnerable somebody can be, emotionally and physically, because like your soft squidgy genitals are out to be damaged by anybody. Like, anything could happen. Pop a bollock.
And and now you're adding, I think, the next level of that. Now you're asking a motherfucker to stab you with your granny's needing, sewing needles,
Yeah.
and tie your diddies up till they're about to pop and
They're
like punch the head off.
purple.
It's
Yeah.
fucking mad. Like,
Yeah, but how do you get there? Like, do you start by just like squeezing? Like, one day you got your diddy squeezed too hard. You're like,
yeah,
oh, I like that, and then you start like putting, elastic bands around them when you're in work or something like that, or like,
that shit. I
does
don't
it
know why, but
escalate, or
that stuff is just freaky. Like, when I see that, I'm like, oh my god,
we
that
sound
is like,
man, we sound like two fucking middle of the road white bread vanilla motherfuckers. Just like, I just want to watch it go in. I just want to watch it go in. Like, the wife will come out and go sleep. Maybe have some chicken wings. Like, and nothing special. Like, it's nothing special. And there's motherfuckers out there like, yeah, the only way I can come is if there's like 11 people in the room and there's like a pool and it's filled with beans. And like, you're like, why are you making it so complicated? Do you know?
and I definitely think, and this is just, I suppose, my personal opinion. Like, you see all these different stories, and like even this guy we're about to talk about, he's into all this like vampire shit, and you can just tell throughout his life there's something amiss there. He's a bit fucked in the head or something. But I always feel like there's definitely lines that can be drawn between that and like weird fetishes and like being into like you said, like kicked in the nuts and all, and eating shit and all. I'm not saying like that, oh, you're guaranteed to be whatever, but there's always a kind of a weird crossover there of like, Jesus, man, you're really walking the tightrope there to be,
Yeah.
in the newspaper.
Yeah, you're only like 15 seconds extra on choking a bitch from being in the newspaper. Like, I don't know why there's loads of girls now being like, oh yeah, choke me, and you have to learn how to choke them right, so that you're not damaging. You're just restricting blood flow or restricting oxygen, but you're not actually like damaging the windpipe. And they're all like, here, watch these 2 videos and come over on Thursday at 8. And you're like, what? Like, what? He's like, yeah, I want you to choke me. And you're like, fuck. How, like, first of all, you have to find somebody who's willing to do that to you, and then, like, the thought process. Like I said, we sound like two dudes who are trying to explain quantum physics to a fucking, a, a bag of kittens, like, and the quarks, like, it doesn't, like, we don't know nothing about it. But I talked to some people who are into it, and I couldn't get a satisfactory explanation in that either. But I think people in our position who don't know, and this usually happens with people, when they don't know, they tend to fill in the gaps of knowledge.
Yeah.
And usually what they fill in the gaps of knowledge with is themselves, we see
Yeah.
the world not as it is, but how as we are, as the fella says. And I find a lot of, like, conservative Christian people, they tend to talk about gay people in the same way, that they just don't understand why you do it, and they will put like negative intent because they see it as the opposite of them, and
Mm-hmm.
they engage in sexual relations with a positive intent. And if you're the opposite of that, it must be negative because my thing is so positive. And I think it's like false equivalency. Like we're looking at that, so call them weirdos and stuff like that. But I'm like, if that's something that they want to do, like you'd often think somebody who's into like choking or tying your ditties up and getting them boxed around and all, it's like, man, you were abused as a child or
Yeah,
something. And
you're
this is
like,
but
yeah,
that's the presumption. I mean, you can't presume. There's some people they just find a thing and then they just like that thing and then that's it. But like, I think the fact that we would try and explain it by saying something like that is showing how little we actually know. And I've been in conversations like this before where I'm like, why are you doing that? Were you abused? Like, no. It's just, I just like it. And you're like, fuck. I still find it baffling why people would listen to like death metal, like black metal. And it's just, to me, that's like a musical. I'm like, I don't find any enjoyment in that. But it's like hundreds of millions of dollars a year industry, like thousands of bands. Like, it's obviously very, very popular
yeah.
and lots of people like it. And they're not faking. They enjoy it. They go to the concerts and they have the whole thing, the image and the whole thing. It's just, it's not for me. So I can't really judge. And I try to think of it on those levels, you know?
And I suppose, and it kind of ties into what you said there about I've always assumed that, I think, like if I was to meet someone and they were to say, look, I'm into a bit of whatever, I'd be like, Jez, you're obviously mental, a murder in the making or whatever. Or the flip side of that is, I feel like if I was to go on these websites and be like, right, I like to have me Mickey tied up to the ceiling and spun around and whatever,
Yeah.
that anyone who reaches out to me willing to do that, I'm like, are you going to kill me? Or
Uh,
are
and
you
that's the
mad?
presumption. So you started by asking me, we both have young kids. What happens if they started exhibiting the signs of somebody who's starting to act really weird? I think that growing up in a super conservative environment where you're like taking care of every single problem that the child may face, cover them in cotton wool and all of that stuff, they end up building no resilience at all. So
Yeah.
when a problem does happen, they're like riddled with anxiety and racked with guilt and all of these. Likewise, if their child is totally neglected, they have no boundaries, they have no emotional regulation, they have, interrelational problems and fucking they're not really great with other people, or maybe they're brilliant with other people because they learn to manipulate because that's the only way that they could survive. So they end up becoming like sociopaths and like all of this fucking mad like child psychology stuff. Like, there's no real way to make sure that they're going to turn out okay. But there definitely, I'm pretending in this case particularly, like there's definitely steps that can be taken to mitigate further issues. Like I said, the people
Yeah.
the people that belong to us, like our extended people who have teenagers that are having some issues at the moment. I know that they're doing everything that they can to stop that young child from feeling those feelings and having that negative experience. But by the same token, like there's nothing really they can do to stop it. There's no surefire answer. You can throw in a bit of medication, you can throw in a bit of therapy, you can throw in a bit of this and that. And by all accounts, they've been raised as well as they could be, and there's no like crazy fucking traumatic experiences. There's no, as far as I know. And yet still they have these things. So there's no real cut and dry recipe for somebody who's going to fucking flip out and like watch a movie
Yeah.
100 times and then like kill your mate and drink his blood. Like there's no recipe for it, but there's things you can do to mitigate it. And if you think about the way society is going now, like there are warning signs and red flags for all of these different things. And without wanting to get into talking about like cultural Marxism and all of these kind of things, that tends to be a penchant of mine. I don't know if you listen to many of the
Hmm.
shows from 2017 or 18, but it became a thing where like I see it everywhere, and all the movies, all the TV shows, they're all getting terrible
Yeah.
woke and all this. It's all red flags, like, and I'm going, this is not right. It's the cultural equivalent of like killing small animals. I'm noticing these red flags. Like, you're doing all this shit, and it's happened before where cultures corroded and then fell apart because all this stuff was allowed to happen. And abolition of free speech and censorship is like red flags for tyranny and all of these things that are like, look at this, we're going down the path. These are all the road signs towards this thing. We need to stop. And some of these issues that people are facing, some of the issues that the kids are facing, identity issues, sexuality issues, like depression, anxiety, suicide, self-harm, fucking harming others, psychopathy, sociopathy, like all of them are caused from a concerted effort, I think, by the media, by like the arbiters of our common culture. They're changing the fucking game. They're changing the paintings on the walls to make us all freak out, man. And at every level, from kids right up to adults, like everybody's freaking out. Everyone's having these effects that are the damage into the future of which is immeasurable. And like you can't explain it. You can't talk it away. You can't mitigate it. It's happening. It's happened. There's loads of fucking kids like that are growing up in pandemic times that haven't been socialized. They missed out on exams. They were fucking freaking out because they had final exams and they had to do their leaving certs like from home and shit, like fucking mad, unprecedented shit. You might not see the fucking effects of that for 5-10 years. They might not fully recover for it because it's not seen as a problem. It's just like, it was just a pandemic, get over it. And you're like, but it fucking really affected me and it's hanging over me for years and it's causing like my life to fucking spiral out of control because I haven't built that resilience or I haven't got that thing that I needed from that developmental part of my life. Like, they don't know the effects of that shit on into the future.
I remember
like
watching.
there's no way to make sure your kids come out okay, really is the answer. You just have to fucking be awake and aware when the shit is happening and when they're showing the day-to-day responses and all of this kind of stuff. Like, you can't stop acting, really. Like, you just have to be able to adapt.
Yeah, I remember seeing something at the start of the whole pandemic thing, and someone was, I can't remember, he was some a doctor, a psychiatrist or something like that, and he was like, look, it's obviously a very real thing to a certain degree, but the long term effects we're going to see from this like post COVID pandemic world isn't going to be anything to do with long COVID or this yoke or that yoke. It's going to be the I suppose the mental health aspect that people won't realize, and then there's going to be a lot of people who are potentially fucked in the head.
Yeah, and I mean, very directly affected by it. Like the socialization aspect for young children, even like junior infants, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Like, they've gone 2 years, which is like a third of their life or a quarter of their life,
Mm-hmm.
without being able to see other people's faces, only for their parents at home in the control of their own house. So they don't know. Like, that's like 70% of communication is non-verbal. So you're talking about the facial expressions and being able to express yourself physically, hugging people, high fives, like all of this kind of stuff. They can't see, like, they're working with their eyes. They don't know, like, smiles, frowns, like all these things.
Yeah.
All that shit is like neurologically developmental, and they didn't learn that at the times that they were supposed to learn that. So now you have a bunch of kids who, like, I'm saying hypothetically, a bunch of kids who don't know, like, when you're happy, you're supposed to smile and let other people know.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not smiling, and everyone's like, oh my God, your kid is a fucking serial killer. He hasn't smiled all day. It's like, yeah, because when it was time for his brain to learn that smiling denotes, like, happiness to other people, like, everyone had their face covered up, so he didn't see nothing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and, like in Japan, they're wearing masks for years and years, right? Like, for 40 years because of the smog and shit like that.
Yeah.
And then all the Japanese girls, when they laugh, they cover their mouth and they go like this. Like, that's their because there's some kind of weird shame about showing your teeth or showing your open mouth, some kind of cultural thing. So that's why, like, all the like the tropes of Japanese girls laughing, they cover their
Yeah. Yeah.
mouth, like. So, like, these things will have an effect culturally, psychologically, and I think people underestimate the power that culture has, and that, like, media has on people. Not least, we just did an episode on Operation Mockingbird,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not least, like, the predictive programming of movies and TV shows that are showing images to people of scenarios that may or may not happen. But when you're imagining the end of the world, wouldn't it be an awful lot handier if you had, like, the concrete images of, I don't know, say, an alien invasion, like when a laser, like, cuts up the tarmac on a road and melts a lot of people, turns them into dust, or If what happens if there's a giant meteor coming to Earth? Like, what would actually happen? Like, how would people react? What would the
Hmm.
riots look like? What would the looting and the rapes and the ultimate destruction, like what would all that stuff look like on a grand scale? And they've put those images into people's heads, so when they are worrying about the world, when they're going to sleep at night with their head in the pillow and they're worrying about the end of the world, that they have the fucking Rolodex of images that have been put in there to cause anxiety. It's like, okay, here's the fucking HD representation of all your anxieties, and you paid fucking £14 to go and watch it for 2 hours. Do you know? Like,
Yeah,
people underestimate that shit. Like, what you don't know sometimes is a gift. Like, what you don't know could go wrong. It's one of the reasons I kind of stood back. Like, I'm usually quite neurotic, like, and I didn't look up any of the myriad ways that a baby could come to harm. And I'm just like living my life, and not because I'd be so stressed, bro. Like, if I was like every
yeah,
tiny
same.
little thing. I fucking read a yoke by accident about like button batteries. Did you ever see that?
Mm-hmm.
You know those button batteries? If a child
Yeah,
swallows a button battery, you have 8 minutes before it's permanent damage and 24 minutes before death.
like
Like,
that's
because it just goes into the tissue and it forms the circuit, and the fucking battery will burn through your child's insides like, you know, kryptonite on Superman. And they're dead. They're brown bread. Like, there's no stopping it. If it goes in, you have 24. You have 8 minutes to stop damage and 24 minutes to stop death. And I was just like, straight down every button battery, everything that takes a button battery, everything's out of the fucking house. Every
them
house
out.
I go into, I'm like, you don't have any button batteries hanging around. Like, don't be fucking, because you just like pick it up, man, and you wouldn't even know. And the next thing,
Yeah.
me belly, and it's, you know.
Yep.
So like, it's those little things that people, the fuel media gives you the fuel for your nightmares. And I think
Yeah.
more and more over the last while, they're pumping that shit out. Um, Maybe this could happen. Hey, have you ever thought about this? Here's a new phobia that you never thought you had, and just like filling your head with shit.
Yeah, and I mean, like in this case in particular, like this dude sort of, he obviously in the lead up to what happened, there was issues and there was stuff going on there, but he kind of grasped onto this piece of media. Now I know that this movie wasn't intended on being like, hey, let's put this out there so loads of lads start hallucinating and thinking that they're going to be like immortal and all this shit. I understand that, but it's scary then the thought that when there is these groups or communities out there, whatever you want to call them, that put these things out there for the public with the intention of being like, let's just put that in their mind. Let's get
Propaganda,
that out. Yeah,
de
let's
facto
get that out there.
propaganda.
Let's get you thinking about that now.
Yeah, this poor motherfucker uh, watched this movie that loads of other people watched and went, like, meh. It was very meh reception.
Hmm.
But he ended up like creating a whole persona and taking a lot of actions based on it. And it just seemed to be the the square peg that fitted into his round hole. He was just looking for a peg to go in, and he's like, I have a round hole and I want to fill it with something. And this just so happened to be the right flavor of crazy that turned him on, fueled him, and made him do some crazy shit. But this lad was,
Yeah,
he's a fucking wrong and from early.
yeah,
I'd love
like
to
I
know
mean,
more about him early, like something
yeah, like
something.
when you, because there doesn't seem to be a massive amount of stuff out there about this case in particular.
I think it's
Uh,
because it's Scottish. If it was American, there'd be an awful lot more. And I do find that, man, when I'm doing these true crimes, like Irish, British, like European, even Russian, like killers and murders. There's not that much, especially in Ireland. Like, it's very fucking hard to find information about Irish
mm,
killers because of defamation laws, because of like freedom of information, because of court reporting. Like, there's laws around maintaining people's privacy, so you can't just go and find that shit. But all the stuff in America is like open season. Like, you can go and look up
yeah,
fucking court TV and watch the trial in action and comment on it. Like, so it's an awful lot more open as far as information. But this lad's a Scottish guy, and that's why I think he can't. Like, nobody did a biography on him yet, like a deep
yeah,
dive. But there's so many people looking to make that type of media in America that it's quite easy to find like a biography or a deep dive on somebody that's killed. Like, I did a show about a guy who killed his family in 2018, and there was already like super deep amounts of information about everybody involved in that. Um, like just a short few years later.
And from particularly with this, like it seems that from a young age here, this fella Alan doesn't really have any friends, doesn't interact with anyone. His parents are kind of saying he spent a lot of time in his room. Which, look, I suppose, as a young lad growing up, like I'm assuming we can both remember, like when you were going to school, there was lads that were harmless, but you were like, ah, yeah, look, sure, he's a bit of a fucking loner, he's a bit of a soft chap, or whatever the
Odd.
remark might have been. Yeah, look, he's a bit odd, and some of them grow up to lead average, normal lives. Some of them might grow up and end up being an alcoholic or something mad or whatever might happen to him.
Might start a podcast or
Yeah, there you go.
yeah, there you go.
And it's like, but this lad seems to like just descend into madness. Like,
Yeah, very quick.
I mean, it was something I didn't realize till after the fact. I kind of, because his story is a bit weird. It's kind of told in reverse in a way. Obviously, when you look up his name, the first thing you're going to see is, Queen of the Damned,
Mm,
killer,
mm.
vampire killer, all this shit. But there's a lot of stuff that went on there. Like at age 14, he stabbed a classmate in
Yeah,
school while he was supposed to be suspended at the time for something else, which I couldn't find any info on why he wasn't supposed to be in the school at that point.
I think it was because he was verbally abusing people in the classroom. Like he was chastised, and he started
Right.
verbally abusing people and threatening violence, and then they sent him home because he was being bullied the whole time in school. From when he started his secondary school at like 12, 13.
Mhm.
And there was one guy and he kept on bullying him, and there was like small retaliations, verbals, threats, and he was sent home. And then like the day after he came back, that bully jumped on him again, started pushing him around, but the retaliation was like, I'm bringing in a knife. And he brought a knife from home with the intention of, if anyone fucks with me, you're getting a fucking stabbing. And he didn't hesitate. He wasn't in the place like 24 hours and he was after stabbing a cunt.
Yeah, and like it's mad because so he stabs this dude, and your man maintains like and I seen several reports actually of him being named as the bully, as in
Yeah,
like, oh, he was an arsehole and he was this and he was that and all, he was aggressive and he was mad. But then obviously there's the flip side of the coin where a lot of times we see it's normally them being fucked with, and then this becomes like a power struggle.
yeah. You see that thing like, I don't know if you have any younger siblings or older siblings. It's never the first hit that gets seen. It's the second hit. It's like
Yeah.
the older one hit the younger one, doof, and the younger one hit back. Or usually it's the younger one hits the older one, and the other one goes, "What the fuck are you doing?" Boom, mom, and you're like, "What are you doing hitting him? He hit me first. I don't care. I saw you hit." Like
And
that.
that, yeah.
That I think is what's happening here. Like this lad's getting pushed as well. Young people are fucking arseholes to each other sometimes for no reason, and like you could just poke at this lad. He was a fucking weirdo anyway. Sitting in his
Yeah.
room, shouting into his pillows, listening to The Cure. He was an odd cunt. Like, and it wouldn't take much to just be like, hey, just saying something stupid like, him Menzies, him menstruation, hey period,
Yeah,
hey,
yeah, like
you
all
know,
that.
just do a shitty, annoying nickname and just be like, hey, what's up, tampon, Alan tampon, all right tampon, still call me tampon, all right tampon, still call me tampon, all right tampon, stop calling me Allan Menzies, like. Go to the principal's office and you're like, oh fuck's sake, like you can
Do
see it
you
happening very easy.
do you think because I even remember from being in school, it's like everyone kind of fucked with everyone. Now, look, I know there was always lads who were like the odd ones who probably got it more and whatever. But like young lads in school are fucking, like you said a minute ago, they're just awful. When I think back to some of the shit like that we used to think was like, uh, harmless, like, and just jeering them. But like
Harmless
you
and
had,
hilarious.
yeah, and you had like, but everyone was doing it, and it was like every day, and you were like kicking them up the hole, and like, just like stupid shit that you didn't think of. And I often wonder, is it like that gradual? beating down of someone, or is it a case where, you know, people have, because I had it, I suppose I was on the other side of it as well, like the boys would be cheering me, and or you could end up something stupid would happen, and then you would be like the target for the week or whatever. Um, I often wonder, is it like the gradual build up, or is it a case where some shit just happens? You know what? I'm not even thinking anymore now. Fuck this. I'm out there stabbing one of them. I don't care.
I think when you're into stuff like extreme stuff like stabbing or actual hard physical violence and retaliations like that, um, you've reached the limit of coping. Like your ability to emotionally regulate has been broken, and obviously
Yeah.
that's coming from some pretty concentrated trauma. Like there's no amount of like, you know, schoolyard jibing, jeering, like I fucking white socks with your uniform, you're gay, like this kind of stuff. It's just like a lot of that teenage shit, especially with boys, is to homogenize social conformity, right?
Mhm.
So everybody wants to feel safe, but you don't feel safe if there's an unknown entity, an unknown quantity, right? So what the bulliers or what the jeerers want to do is to make themselves be the leader so that they feel safe. There's everyone's below them, but they also don't want any uh, unmeasured variable within that group. So what
Yeah.
happens is like the top dog will bully like the top 4 or 5, and then those people will be in smaller social groups who would then jeer each other to be all the same. So like, you know, it's almost an alpha, like a
Mhm.
hierarchical structure of, you know, social organization, and it ends up like everybody, you know, I don't know what it was like in your year, like everybody buys the same type of shoes, and if you had different types of shoes, you were jeered to bits. So everyone, like in my, you know, I was going to school in 95, 96, 97, 98, and it was boat shoes, and one of the lads came in wearing a pair of like Echo, like, you know, round toed shoes,
Yeah, yeah.
and the amount of abuse just for having different shoes, for not conforming to the social norm of everybody else. Like, you think you're different. Why are you wearing? Did you rob like a convent? Like, where did you get the fucking
Mm.
nuns' shoes out of? And you bought them, and they're 2 sizes too big. When you're trying to lie to everybody, trying to lie you have bigger feet, because you all know you have a small dick, so your feet aren't that big. Why are you wearing too big a shoe? Like, who donated you the foot? Did you rob them out of St. Vincent de Paul's window? Like, all of this abuse over these shoes for the poor
Yeah.
motherfucker. And I know, like, it held heavy on his heart. And he ended up going out and buying like normal, like boat shoes with the little lip on them and all.
Yeah.
You buy the same, like nobody was. You know, I had a fucking bus Aran school bag that my dad got for free, and the amount of abuse, just like walking up the hall, and somebody would just be like, "Bus Aran," like, and I'm like, my family have nothing to do with bus Aran. I don't nothing to do, like, not an employee. I don't know where the bag came from. That was my fucking school bag for a whole year. There's nothing I could do about it. And I
Yeah.
just had to,
It's a
just
school
because it was
bag.
different, because it wasn't like an Umbro or a Puma bag, like the same as everybody else had, you get abused for it. Can you imagine if you had like a total identity change where your hair, you were like fucking Robert Smith, and you were like listening to mad music, and you were wearing like a choker under your fucking school shirt, and you had like a septum piercing that you had to flip up into your nostrils and stuff, and everybody knew you were a weirdo. You didn't really talk to anybody. You had like one friend only, and you guys like had your lunch over by the wall in the corner, didn't talk to anybody. Like, that motherfucker's gonna get abuse because he's different,
Yeah.
and the difference is the fear for the safety of the group. It's like he is an unknown quantity. He could like, and it's a natural like lizard brain thing. Like, he could not behave the way the group kind of dictates he should behave, and would attract like a larger predator to come over and attack us. Like, if we're all, shh, be quiet, and there's no known quantities, like, bah, like there's a fucking, something's gonna come out and root you all out and eat you all, you know, like meerkats or some shit. Like, that's what that thing comes from. But you're also learning social resilience. You're growing your sense of humor. you're growing like loyalties and relationships with people, because obviously like the people who defend you, they're your mates, and you're in a jeering match against another group of people, and you're forming like all of these, like you're learning how to be a person in that moment. That just so happens to be in like jeerings, like that's how you grow
Yeah.
or whatever. But like this Allan Menzies like didn't have any of that, man. He was on the outside, no emotional resilience, but also no limits. There was no limits to his internal narrative. Like his internal depravity was never checked by anyone. He's never told like, hey man, is it weird? Is it weird that I want to touch my dick off the bonnet of a hot car? Is that a weird thing? And I was like, yes, it's a weird. What the fuck? Oh, like I did it once, like it's grand. And then like Jesus shouldn't be telling people
Even
about
the
that.
fact
Like,
that like after this, like he stabs this dude in school, and then he goes to stab him in the chest, I think, and I don't know what happens. They have a bit of a scuffle. He runs off. He runs to his granny's house,
yeah,
and the first thing she does is lock him in the fucking room and
yeah.
ring the guards. And it's like, right, if she, I'm not saying that she wouldn't have done that anyway, but if her first thought is to lock him in the room and ring the police, you
How many
have to
times?
wonder,
How many times has been locked in that room already?
yeah, like somebody has to have been like, right, this we knew this motherfucker's like not all there, and it's getting progressively worse. I mean, he spent 3 years, I think, in that juvenile detention center after
Yeah,
that, and apparently just came out and was completely unchanged.
from 14 to 17, and then at 17 he was allowed to go back into school, and you're like, are you for real? Are you actually for real? The motherfucker like reef back and stab somebody for like pushing him in the hall, and you're just gonna let him back into Gen Pop? Like that's not
With a
right.
9-inch hunting knife as well, if you don't mind.
Like a serious knife, like not a fucking. It wasn't like a butter knife. Like this is serious shit. I think the fact that he didn't kill him is a shame, and I know it was like a schoolboy nearly died. But if the young lad had died, he wouldn't have been able to get back out again. He would
Yeah,
have been like, "That's your ass. Like we know what you're doing."
yeah.
I think the fact that he was locked in the room maybe shows the family culture around punishment was
Mhm.
isolation, no communication. Uh, for me, if a child is running into my arms with a bloody knife, going, "I'm after stabbing somebody in school, shit, help me," the first thing I would do is not like, "Here, I'm gonna lock you in a room with that knife that you just stabbed that cunt with," because the first thing I'm thinking is like, he's gonna panic, go, "I'm going to jail forever," and fucking jam it into his
Yeah, and
jugular
yeah,
vein, and it's like, the next time I open this door, it's gonna be, you know, the elevator in The Shining. Like, of course,
yeah.
that's the first thing you're gonna think, but instead, no, separate, isolate, lock him in the room. We can't handle him anymore. But his parents were having terrible fucking trouble with him. Like he was in trouble all the time, completely antisocial. He was already killing small animals. Like this guy was red flags like long before he stabbed a person.
Yeah, and like I mean, he gets put away, for that time in the detention center, and I think after the fact, I think the parents and maybe some other people interested in the case had kind of said, oh, he wasn't really treated. He was more so just locked away, like he had been at home, and it didn't really do anything for him. So when he came out, he was just the exact same person,
Well, separate
basically.
again, separate, isolate. Like it's the same treatment as you get at home, and all that breeds is fucking resentment. Internalization of negative emotions, guilt, shame, blame, all the shit that fucking makes you go, you know what? I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck about anything anymore. There's nothing like anything I do, I'm gonna get treated like this. So, it's kind of that thing of the fella that like did 26 years in jail for murder, and then they found out that the guy was actually still alive, and it was a real hard decision for the judge to be like, well, shit, you're after doing the time. Should you be allowed to kill this guy now? Then, if you've already spent time in jail for this kind of stuff, like he's already after doing his time for a crime that he may or may not have committed, um, like many many times over, being
Hmm.
locked in this room, being isolated, being removed. Again, it's the same thing with the kids with the masks. Like he's not getting to interact with people on a proper level. He's not really socializing. He's not really forming any kind of emotional resilience. And the only can you imagine being pushed in school and then just reaching back for a knife and going, "I know what I'm going to do to make this never happen again," and you fucking stab a cunt. Like that's a really extreme
Yeah. Yeah.
reaction that has very, very serious consequences that obviously he was able to understand, but then completely disassociate from. Like, I don't know what's going to happen to me after this. At that point, he was a man with nothing to lose, or a boy with nothing to lose.
Mhm.
That's the most dangerous motherfucker. Like, he's like, oh, my life is over after I put this into him. Okay. As if you wouldn't know, like, that's, you're fucking fucked after that. Like,
Yeah, and from that point, then I think is the scary part. Like, I mean, he gets back out of this detention center or whatever, comes home, and I think his parents are happy about it, and it's all great. And within a few weeks, I think they start to realize he's watching a shitload of serial killer documentaries and
yeah.
videos. Which,
He
I
was,
suppose,
dude, he was obsessed with Hitler and the Holocaust.
yeah,
He was obsessed with
like
how the Nazis
Nazis and
would
shit.
kill Jews in the concentration camps, all the various ways of them being murdered. And I'm like, come on, dude, if you don't start a true crime podcast, you've no excuse for that shit. Come on.
Yeah, I mean,
Start a
and I think
podcast, like.
when he went back to school, I think there's a report of him bringing a noose into
Yeah,
the school that he had
yeah.
made, and he was like telling them about like he was gonna hang himself with it, and this is how you do it, and
But dude, suicidal ideation is like super red flags like that. You need to go into therapy, you need to go in like medication, therapy. There was also reports of him saying like that he was able to hear voices and he heard like God talking to him. He heard like walls whispering, and you're like, okay, man, what you have are the early signs of schizophrenia. We need to deal with your alternate reality. We need to deal with your ability to disassociate and depersonalize. Like, he was depersonalized all the time,
mm-hmm.
which means that he didn't see himself as a person, but also other people. Like, they might as well have been, bags of sand or whatever. Like, there's no value for human life
Yeah,
there. And even a small bit of therapy and some intervention, psychological intervention or psychiatric intervention would probably have had really profound effects on somebody diagnosed that young. But like, they didn't do anything about him. He was just out there stabbing cons up and talking about vampires and showing people fucking nooses.
yeah, and I mean, I suppose after this, like you said, he's completely disassociated. Like, he's not. I don't think at this point he's in reality at all,
No.
and he's been isolated again. So I suppose it's just uh, reconfirmed everything he probably thought in his mind. And he gets out now, and then this is when he meets Thomas McKendrick. And I suppose, to a lesser degree, I think he was a bit of a loner and socially inadequate as well.
Yeah, but just
And
in a normal way though.
yeah, that's what I mean, like in a in a
Yeah.
in a normal sense. So then,
In a like
somebody like,
I've got a really, really, really high score in FIFA kind of a way. Like,
yeah,
yeah,
like a normal kid, I suppose, in a
yeah.
lot of ways. And like, I feel like Alan, latched onto this, and
They latched
I
onto each
suppose,
other, yeah.
yeah, and for want of, maybe it sounded a bit weird, but the more you kind of look at the relationship, and I'm not saying that he ever looked at it in like a sexual way or anything like that, but there's definitely, you get a vibe that Alan is looking at this as like more of a relationship, maybe like he's my crutch kind of a thing. Like, they spend all their time together. He's constantly over in the dude's house. He
It's
doesn't.
it's codependency. It's a really
Yeah,
toxic relationship dynamic where the two people can't exist without each other. Like, the actions of one directly and dramatically affect the moods, the opinions, the attitudes,
yeah,
the behaviors of the other. Like, again, it comes from the isolation, separation, depersonalization, and the lack of resilience, the lack of emotional maturity, um, possibly a lot of childhood trauma, and these guys are in a position where they don't probably feel whole themselves on their own,
mm,
and when partnered with another person that echoes their sensibilities back to each other, um, they end up being like justified in their own existence, but only in each other. And if one doesn't agree with the other, it not only, it's not just an agreement, it's like a crisis of personality for both of them because
yeah,
they're codependent. Like, it's some of the most toxic
And
horrible relationships like end up being codependent, and it's why, like, abusers stay with abused people stay with their abusers, and why,
Mhm.
it's really like it's a fucking deep psychological thing. But for the two of them to find each other, like two weirdo loners, to come together like that, it was a recipe for disaster, really. Like, same as the Columbine lads.
yeah, and you can you will see that now in a second when what happens like that. They have a disagreement about a certain thing, and then that literally goes from with a normal person that would be just a disagreement or whatever, fuck you or whatever, turns into like you said again, like gets pushed in a hallway, takes out a 9-inch hunting knife and goes, yeah, this seems like the next step. Um, he so Thomas brings over. I'm assuming it's a DVD at the time. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, it
Yeah,
would be
even
DVD. Yeah,
2002, yeah,
they were playing computer games the whole time, and then they were watching TV, and he brought over a
and
DVD and went, "Let's have a
had
go at
your
this."
stacks of bad DVDs out of fucking Extravision or somewhere,
Yeah,
and he pulls out this Queen of the Damned movie, and they watch it, and apparently Alan is just like fixated on this thing and wants to watch it immediately the second it's over,
probably
which
got the stog
already
for
is like,
Aaliyah, and I wouldn't blame him.
yeah,
10 out of
and
10.
but it just seems like even there, like, hearing that now, it's like, just that's a bit mad, and you've seen the film for the first time, and immediately when it's over, you're like, yeah, watch that again there, this minute, put that back on.
Yeah, unless you're like a film critic, or like a YouTuber doing a review or something on it.
Yeah.
It's a bit weird.
So
I
then he
think
gets a
I think it's a
lend of this.
decent film. You've seen the film,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
decent. Like, it's not brilliant. I think the fella playing Lestat was watery, mediocre.
Mm.
But like, I really like Lestat, and I like the Vampire Chronicles like series. We just did an episode on those conspiracy guys about vampires, and it's a
Mhm.
lot of those like older books, like of Lestat's legacy that I've read, and this one was kind of like a modernization. He wants to be a rock star, and he's.
Yeah, like I suppose, look, it's a sign of the times as well with that film. Like, they were trying to like mold this existing universe and lore with like, let's be cool, like, get your
Yeah,
Walkman out, buy the soundtrack.
like the Crow, like, kind of vibes,
Yeah,
like it or something.
yeah,
Like, nah.
yeah.
But I think the thing that fascinated Menzies was not the vampire lore, or not like Lestat being like a shirtless fucking, Pattinson esque, or like
Mhm.
pale and wan rock star. Um, like a vampire Russell Brand or something. Um, what he was fascinated with, and what's kind of on record as his fascination, was the fact that this ancient evil was awakened by Lestat's hubris. So the hubris of the vampire Lestat, thinking that he was going to be the greatest thing ever, and he was going to have all of these kids in the audience that were going to volunteer themselves as victims for him, and he was going to be
Mhm.
like the strongest, most powerful vampire, and make an army of vampires out of the fans, and the blah blah blah. There was this whole plan, and it awakened this ancient evil that came and said, like, no, no, you don't know what you're fucking with here. And the fact that she was able to, without contact, like control people's minds, being able to make other people do her bidding, just by the power that she had, like the innate power, like through her thoughts, make other people act. And I think this was Alan's fucking. This was the
Yeah.
dream. This was the fixation, because he's like, oh, nobody ever does what I want them to do. Like, I'd like them to treat me better. I'd like them to do this or that. Or I'd like somebody to touch my wiener. I'd like people to be on my level. Or I'd like them to like the things that I like, which is weird stuff. And he couldn't make anybody be the way he wanted them to be, or he couldn't find anyone that was like on his level that he could vibe with, he could fuck with. So he wished for the powers of the Queen of the Damned to be able to force people into loving him, maybe. Like, I wish I could force you to love me. That's what I think his fascination was, not with the bloodletting and the vampirism and all that stuff. It was like he identified so hard with the movie because it was like all the things that he wished that he could do to other people.
Yeah, and I think the spin was definitely put on, like, oh, he wanted to be immortal and he wanted to be a king to her queen and all this shit. I genuinely agree with what you said there, and it's definitely something to do with, obviously the power dynamic that he's out there dealing with there for his whole childhood of, all the boys are fucking with me and everyone's fucking with me and I can't, and he just wants to be in, I suppose, her position
Yeah,
of being able to do that, and it's all my circumstances and how I want it and the way I want it. And I think, for want of a better word, I suppose, he sort of starts to manifest this idea of like, we're connecting here now. I'm
yeah.
Me and her are kind of connected. I'm on the same wavelength as what she's thinking.
Or at least the ideological, like, uh, uh, allegory of what she represents.
Yeah, yeah,
Like the force of evil that, if channeled, will be able to give him a similar power. And obviously, like, he knows about like Satanism, he knows about like the dark arts or whatever, and he's like, yeah, man, if I get made a vampire or whatever a vampire may be, if I coalesce to the will of this dark force, if I'm able to like hear its commands and do its bidding, then I get rewards in this life and the next.
yeah, yeah.
And to be honest, man, it's nothing that you wouldn't hear down in fucking down in Mass on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Like
Down
the
the Friary of a
down
Sunday
down
morning.
Bride Street. Like, you wouldn't be told any less lies down there. Like, do what you're fucking bid, do what you're told, be a good boy. Don't swear, don't curse. And if you do anything, come in here and tell me about it. And I won't tell anyone, but I'll know. And follow the rules and do as you're told, and you get a reward. Maybe not in this life, but in the next. Oh, also give me money as well, by the way. So, like, it's not. It's.
Yeah.
There's a hole like that in most humans, and that's why religion is made. It's just this lad managed to find his own very specific flavor of that, and he went at a full tilt. And I mean, it's not dissimilar to like, oh, demons told me to fucking. I got possessed by a demon who was speaking to me in my dreams and told me to do all this, and it would give me like, all the powers to fight back against the people who've wronged me over my life. You're like, yeah, that's fucking typical schizophrenic delusion. Like, typical,
Hmm.
like, I'm hearing voices of a powerful being that are telling me I get everything that I wish for if I do if I do what it tells me. Like, that's fucking textbook shit.
Yeah. Okay, and it's happened countless times, and like, this kind of, I don't know if this would just all fed into his delusion or whatever, but he was like starting to tell his parents then, vampires are real and telling them all these stories about different things. And like, he would go berserk when anyone would question like his logic or his belief or whatever. I'd seen another thing that apparently they had caught him with ox liver or something like that, and he was
Yeah,
on about
yeah.
sucking it and all, and like
Yeah.
blood and weird
He's
shit.
like, I was hungry. You're like, just have normal dinner. No, this is what I eat now.
Yeah, like,
It's
and
real
it's hard to
Cartman
see
shit. Like,
leave me alone, mom.
yeah, it's real like, come on, man, I want to be a vampire. See? Like, it's just a cow's liver, man. Like, it's real fucking petulant teenager shit. Like, but obviously, if you found a cow's liver in your child's bedroom, you're like, did you put that in a pint glass and then put it in the microwave and then try and stick your dick in it? Because if you did, we just buy you a fleshlight. Like, there's no need to be.
Doing this.
Yeah, there's no need
Thanks.
to be doing that shit. Like, but it is an alarming thing. Look at, man, this shit is fucking textbook. It's happening for dozens of years, like decades.
Yeah.
That has been recorded, and probably hundreds of years that has been seen to be like possessions or fucking exorcisms needed to get rid of it and all this fucking shit. Like, um, you're talking about similar cases. Like, remember the two young ones that killed that stabbed that girl to bits for the Slender Man?
Yeah. Yeah.
Same fucking story. Like, some ineffable evil force command them to do something with a promise of a reward in this life or the next. There's something deep in the human condition, like some gap in everybody's soul that seems to be taken advantage of by all these religions that go like, come here, if you tell them this, because they're all afraid of death, if you tell them that they have a place in an immortal realm where they don't have to be afraid of turning into nothingness, they'll just do everything that you say. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's the ultimate promise, and it never has to be cashed in because you only find out that it's bullshit after you die or whatever. So, like, nobody's coming back asking for their money back
Yeah.
after
At that
death
point, it's
because
redundant.
exactly. So, like, that's what this guy is going. I want to transcend death. That's what the papers are saying. He wants to be immortal. Personally, I don't think so. I think he just went, oh, she has loads of power. I want that. And if I get to be if I'm a vampire and I get to be that, that's what I want.
Yeah, and that feeds into then. I think not long before all this happens, he apparently was lying in bed one night, and she comes before him or something like this in
Mm-hmm.
the room, and she offers him the deal of a lifetime about, you have to kill someone to become a vampire, and I can give you immortality. And apparently for him, then he's lying in the bed going, yeah, sure, that's fucking brilliant. I just had to kill someone. Sure,
I was,
that's grand.
I was planning on doing that anyway. What are you talking
Yeah,
about? Yeah,
I already tried to kill
sound.
someone anyway
Yeah.
years ago. So
Are you sure it wasn't like some guy with like a New York accent being like, so yeah, you want to be in a group with vampires and you got to kill this guy. His name is No Lips Tony. You got to kill him. Like some kind of hook him in with this like vampire mafia. That's a fucking that's a crossover that hasn't been done yet. The vampire mafia. Hey, this guy's a made man. Like
I'm actually surprised. Yeah,
I've never seen a vampire mafia movie. That sounds like the ultimate, like, welcome to the family. It's about bloodlines. Yeah, we call it
I need to go and
bloodlines,
look. I need to go and look that up now, because I feel like that there's going to be some like
dude.
shockingly bad, like fucking,
Mafia film. Yeah,
yeah, with
I just want to
vampires
bite.
or something
Hey,
like that.
I just want to bite your neck. Fucking relax over here.
we call it bloodlines, and ancient Sicilian vampires were being chased by vampire hunters with garlic, because they're mad for garlic in Italy. They're like, hey, we gotta get out of here. There's too much garlic. I got to turn into a vampire. Everywhere I go is a fucking garlic. And they got chased out of the
That
old
line,
country.
or that name was good. Bloodlines. I like that.
Bloodlines, and then they got chased to America to escape it, and they found all of these like Dutch settlers and shit, like, and that's where all the early vampire stories come from. And went to New Orleans, and they spread, because that's where the mafia went. They first went to like New York, and then went down to the southern states, and then when they started getting caught like eating Mormons in Oregon and shit, like they went out to Vegas and tried to make it out in California. And
This is out there now in the ether. So any of those fucking like full moon features and all these like really low budget horror movie companies, do not rip off this idea.
it's
Or if you
called
do, you need to reach out to Gordo first.
it's called Bloodlines, and it's produced by what we call the production the production company.
Something tacky.
Yeah. I'm telling you, I'm looking it up now, but mafia vampire movie, there has to be, like, that's a fucking perfect crossover, man. Like, think about it. Well dressed.
I mean,
You
if
know,
we've got things like Sharknado and fucking, I seen one today actually is being released, Sharkula. So it's a
fuck
drag.
off.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, Sharkula.
amazing.
Yeah. I feel like if them things are out there, surely to God.
Ah, dude, I think we might have been usurped. There's one here called Innocent Blood from 1992. I'll do the movie voice here. Marie is a vampire with a thirst for bad guys. When she fails to properly dispose of one of her victims, a violent mob boss, she bites off more than she can chew and faces a new, immortal danger. Apparently, yeah. A female vampire with a conscience decides to restrict her feeding requirements to the violent Pittsburgh gangsters who are at large in the city. Marie's victims become vampires themselves as she fails to permanently immobilize them, so when this happens, the gangsters become a serious problem which she has to fix. I mean, mine was a little bit more kind of Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, like a cabal of hundreds of years old, like the Sicilian families. There is one called Sicilian Vampire from 2015, which is, it's pitched as equal parts Goodfellas and From Dusk Till Dawn. What a fucking mix. Reputed mobster Sonny Trafficante was hoping to get away with the family hunting lodge for a little rest and relaxation to create some memories. Instead, what he got was a night he will never forget. So he's Sonny's bitten by a bat, which is released from a container of bananas that they brought up to the lodge. COVID. The bat takes a vicious bite of Sonny's neck and then flies off into the night. From that moment, Sonny is entrusted with powers beyond that of any mortal. Supersonic hearing, enhanced sight, superhuman strength. This doesn't sound like Sicilian Vampire. This sounds like fucking, what would you call it? Bat guinea or something like that. Like,
Hey, I'm a creature of the night. I was, I'm fighting crime.
We I don't. Before the moment passes, I don't want to skim over the fact that your movie trailer voice is
Yeah.
something I'm in awe of. You've sold me on those two terrible films with that. That's something you've crafted over the last fucking 20 years.
Yeah, I love it. I got it from a comedian. Oh, what's his name? In a world. What the fuck was his name? Not Harry Barker. Come on, you know him. We used to watch him years ago on YouTube.
Yeah, all the time, like so much. I know
him. The Pablo Francisco.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he does that whole like.
Yeah. Get to the chopper. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. You should use that more. That's fucking class.
The movie voice, yeah, it works really good in the mic because you can do in this summer, or you can do the Disney one and it's a little bit more jovial, like this summer, a dog, a porcupine, and a confused armadillo make their way across the Rockies. But I do
That's
like
another.
that.
Yeah, that movie trailer voice, that's something, look, and I always say this, that I feel like we're in an age now with movies where I feel like it's probably a bit of nostalgia as well, but like there's something missing in some of the atmosphere, especially of horror films nowadays.
Yeah.
And I feel like things like that, like, just having the classic, like, kind of cheesy, like, movie trailer with the voice, and it's like, it might only even be like a 15-second clip, but you just have that like this summer thing and all. There's
Hyped.
something about that, man.
Yeah, it's hype, man. That's what it is. Now you get like the fucking cinematic trailer. It's 2 minutes 40 seconds long, and it shows you all the major plot points of the fucking movie before you've even gone to see it. You're like, sure, I know what's going to happen now. I'll be expecting that. In the trailer I saw that cunt's head explode, so I have absolutely like no like emotional investment in that guy's character because I know he's going to fucking die because you showed me in the trailer 9 months ago. I think it's they ruin a lot of stuff that way. But look at Bloodlines, the vampire mafia story. How a lust for blood and money this summer. A lust for blood and money led one tribe to the new world to make it theirs. In cinemas, Bloodlines, PG-13. Because there will be tits. There will be definitely tits in it.
What I need to do now is I need to clip that, and then I need to find someone to put together some shitty trailer with like from like Goodfellas and this and that.
Yeah. We totally do that, man. You sell the whole thing on a trailer. Fucking.
Do you know what? Right, I actually interviewed a fella, Mark Jones's name. He came up with the original Leprechaun.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's super nice guy.
Haunt
Right?
my dreams as a child. Christ Almighty.
Funny
Between that and the plant from fucking Little Shop of Horrors, man.
I don't know if you can see it there. No,
yeah. Turn the lights.
I
saw it when you had the lights on earlier on. Oh man, the baby face from is that from what was that movie?
Happy Death Day.
Happy Death Day. Fucking love that. And the second one is really good as well.
Let me.
Oh my god, look at that cunt.
Hold on. Because this is going to annoy me if I can't bring him up close. Now that you said it haunted you.
Oh man, I won't sleep tonight now. Oh fuck yeah, I saw him earlier on in the wide shot.
So many people will wonder why I have this.
I'll put you in the wide so everybody can see it. Oh Jesus.
So this is I actually can't remember the name of the artist who made this. I had this shipped from the States. Yeah, it's probably like one of my prized possessions.
Nah, fuck that shit, man.
No, not a
No,
fan. My kid,
like
like
obviously,
my
like
uncle is
it's
7.
brilliant. His hands used to freak me out.
There's actually he offered to send me. He makes a full size one now, so he has like the little shoes and the hands and whatever. My kid, like
Put a
he's
flashlight in the
7.
arse of it.
He doesn't mind being up here, but this is the only thing that he's afraid of. Like
Yeah,
genuinely like, Dad, is that real? Can that like
it's genuinely scary. Like I'd watch that and be like, "Ugh," like that, and then you'd watch something like
yeah.
Trolls or
Yep.
something, and you're like, yeah, that's shit. But then something like the Leprechaun to the uninitiated. Like if I was a grown ass man, I watched that now, I'd be like, meh. But
Yeah, whatever.
I remember it as a kid, man, like fucked up.
Yeah. But the guy that created that, he just on the topic there of, slapping together a movie like that, he nearly sold a Hellraiser. What was it? Or no, sorry,
There's a new
Lep-
Hellraiser coming as well, by the way. Did you hear that?
and it's a chick.
Yeah, it's gonna be Whopper, as long as she's not like
Um,
a gay black lesbian or whatever.
yeah, that's
We'll see.
yeah. He nearly sold the whole idea of Leprechaun versus Wishmaster off the back of like a really crudely cut trailer with
Oh,
clips. I need
amazing,
to send it to you, man. Right? It's
amazing,
actually, I was surprised. I was like, that's fucking class.
amazing. Sure, that's how they did Freddy versus Jason. Like that's how they got that, and both of those franchises got like 2 more individual films out of that collab. Like those franchises were dead, and because of that movie, they got 4 more movies. Like, and
And
there's a
funny actually.
Friday 13 reboot coming too.
Hmm.
Which
And
is
they
like,
were,
who asked for that? Nobody asked for that shit. And me and a guy called Stephen Bradley, who you'd love as well, by the way. He's a total movie, aficionado. We were just spitballing at the start of an episode a few months ago. And we are like, do you know what would be class? Using like Amazon Prime money to make like a brand new reboot of the Highlander series. Turns out, in the meantime,
mhm,
they're doing it.
yep.
And after, I tell you what, if they use any of the fucking idea, we spent 40 minutes at the start of the show just spitballing, having the crack, coming up with concepts. Apparently, Henry Cavill is going to be playing the Highlander. The main, we don't know if it's Duncan or Connor McLeod. It's probably be a different person. And I tell you, if they use anything that we said on that show, I'm going to sue the cunts. Same as with Bloodlines. Like,
So now you have two. Jeez, man, you might own a film business at the end of this,
stacking
producer.
properties, bro. This is all about IP.
Funny when you mentioned Freddy versus Jason. They were actually supposed to have a sequel to that. They were going to bring Ash from the Evil Dead into it, so it's going to be Freddy versus Jason versus Ash. And it never. I think the 3 different properties, they couldn't agree on who was going to get what and who was going to be the main guy and this and that. So it ended up, they actually spun it off into a series of graphic novels, which were class.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, Evil Dead got a nice little bump as well with what was that movie where he came back, but he was playing himself, the actor.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Bruce, what's his first name again?
Bruce Campbell.
Bruce Campbell Must Die or something it's called, is it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's something like that. No, my name is Bruce.
My
No.
Name is Bruce, that's it.
That there's actually an Evil Dead video game coming out.
Really? Yeah, see,
Yeah.
there's all these properties, man. Yeah, My Name is Bruce, 2007. There's loads of fucking really good, like, franchises, let's call them,
Mhm.
that weren't properly utilized for their multimedia capabilities because the technology wasn't there to, I mean, they're rebooting shit. They're fucking
Yeah.
making computer games from shit. Like, keeping old properties going for no reason other than
Mhm.
they probably don't have to sign, like, any new contracts. It's just like, next paycheck. And they're not going back to develop. Like, they made an Alien vs. Predator game. Shit. Dog shit. It's like some very super cheap, like, fucking, it feels like a game from 2005 or something like that, like,
Mhm. Yeah.
very, very poor. And like, that was one of the fucking, just one of the great, imagine playing as the Predator in a properly appointed computer game, like, with all the different weapons, all the lore, like, all the different movies, like,
Oh man, it'd be unreal.
unreal. And they've never done it right.
That always baffles me though, that there's so many like untapped resources there that they just haven't gotten right, or it's just been a cash in. They've just been like, yeah, slap Alien Predator on the front of that there and it'll be grand.
Or skin packs. The Dead by Daylight like did
Yeah.
decent. Like it's good crack, but it's very like one trick pony. And the gameplay is not amazing. Like there's no real stakes. There's no the kind of getting to the gate is fine, but now it's like they're putting in Pyramid Head, they're putting in Freddy, putting in fucking Stranger Things skins and all this kind of stuff. Like it's not.
And I think it's just to try and keep it alive. It's like, oh, here, keep playing this game because now Freddy is going to be in it.
Here's a new thing, yeah. But I think like there's no real like how do you conceptualize a game like that? And then you have stuff like God of War or the new God of War is going to be fucking amazing. Or what's that one? Elden Ring.
Yeah.
The lore in that alone, like, and it's all on the scale of Game of Thrones, but like the lore is going to be phenomenal, and it's going to be sequels and sequels and sequels. I just don't think they're utilizing all that old IP because like you have to have a hit movie first before anyone will invest. And I'm like, are you joking? There's 40-year-old men all around the world who grew up on that shit, who have expendable income and are the only cunts who are able to afford to buy scalped PS5s. Make a fucking game, stupid cunts. This is not for kids, like, Anyway, I digress.
Actually, they're making a Texas Chainsaw Massacre game as well. Speaking of fucking...
Oh, yeah?
And unfortunately, I actually think it's done by Gun Media, who done that Friday the 13th game.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's probably something like that. The Friday the 13th was like, meh.
Yeah, again, like it was like Dead by Daylight. It's like, yeah, it's grand and all, but just after a while, I was like, the replayability here is zero for me. After a while, I'm like, fucking hell, this is terrible.
Yeah,
put a story or something even in it to give me something a bit extra as well.
It's a titillation, and it's not even as good as like a Grand Theft Auto 5 multiplayer sandbox experience where there's thousands of individual experiences. You can just go, I'm gonna ramp this car off this thing, like with if you're in the game and you're playing as one of the camp goers or whatever, there's only certain amounts of ways that you can get away. There's only certain amounts, like
once you play through like the 10 possibilities, it's like, okay, right.
That's it, yeah. Like you can get it done in a day, and you're like, oh, that's it.
Yeah, that's it then.
But yeah, Bloodlines. We'll collaborate and cut together a trailer using. I can think of the movies now, like what's that one? Near Dark. The footage from Near Dark has that kind of mafia vibe, and we take some stuff from some old mafia movies. Like, yeah, we can totally do that.
That's how the cogs are going.
Yeah, I'm like Rolodex and all the movies that match the color palette and all this. Yeah, okay, okay, cool.
Because I'm sure there's probably some talented fucker out there now who'd be able to put together something like that, like instant.
This summer, an intern.
So I suppose to circle back then to, I guess, the end of this story in a way. So the two boys do their usual thing. They're meeting up in the rooms and, I don't know, probably smoking joints or doing whatever they're doing, drinking and all, and fucking watching films. And of course,
the joints that exacerbate the old schizophrenia, I would imagine.
Yeah, your man is again dead nuts on Queen of the Damned. Come on, we watch it. And at this point, then I think that Thomas has kind of gotten sick of this, and he's probably like feeling like they're in a bit of a rut. And he kind of starts to say, can I not do something else or watch something else or whatever? And Menzies is getting sort of pissed off by this and kind of standoffish. And then he starts to I think they end up putting the movie on, from what I gather. And, Thomas is sort of mocking, vampires and immortals and all this stuff. And then he's mocking Aaliyah and different things like that. And your man just loses the plot. And they have this big, massive fight, and it's shouting and roaring. And he tells him to, from what I gather, he originally he tells him to get out, and not to come back or something like that.
As far as I understood, they were starting to watch the film, and what's the guy's name? McKendrick.
Yep, Thomas McKendrick.
So Thomas McKendrick starts saying like, "Oh, fucking Aaliyah," like, and at this point, Aaliyah was dead. Like, she died just before the movie was released.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you're saying, oh, that, this bitch or whatever, talking shit about her. And I think because Menzies had, I guess, adopted this lore of this movie, which is from, like, a series of films, like, presumably he would have done his due diligence and read the
Yeah.
Anne Rice book series and known about Lestat and known about the lore, like, of that world of vampires, which is very specific. And to be honest, gives an awful lot, from our vampires episode, like, gives an awful lot of the rules of vampirism that have been adopted into, like, accepted canon across the board. Like, you don't drink blood from a dead corpse. It'll make you sick if you're a vampire, this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I'm and maybe it wasn't the case, but I'm very surprised that there was no mention of him diving into any of the other, like you said, any of the other stories, the background, the lore, interview with a vampire. There's no real mention of anything other than just this movie.
And I think that's probably unrealistic, man, to be honest, because, like, surely if he was as obsessed with it as he was
Yeah.
with other things, like, he seemed to have this, like, I don't want to, it's probably a trigger word for some people, but like an autistic level
Mhm.
obsession, with these topics. Like, he'd go in full subjectivity obsession. Like, he was mad for Hitler and the Holocaust. Like, he was mad for that shit. Hoovering books up by all
And
reports. So I couldn't imagine a world where he wouldn't discover this IP and go, oh my God, what was your one's name? Akasha?
mhm.
Like, and that's a dark, deep lore in the Anne Rice vampire world that he wouldn't go back into, like, looking into, the adventures of Lestat across, I think it's 12 or 13 different books that she
Yeah.
has, Anne Rice, about the Vampire Chronicles. So many characters, so many different people to identify with, like, such a vast and ancient lore, all, I think, adopted into the common and accepted canon of vampirism by and large. Like, Anne Rice is responsible for a lot of that. I couldn't imagine a world where he wouldn't do that if he was so dead set on becoming a vampire. So I think it's easier for the mainstream media to explain, and especially, don't forget, dear listener, that this all happened in Scotland. Like, this is not in some place in, like, Idaho
Yeah.
or Connecticut or some crazy motherfucker in Tennessee, like, or some shit like that. Like, this is, like, a lad in Scotland who's just, like, watching Queen of the Damned that he rented from Blockbuster on a fucking combo TV DVD player in the spare room. What do they call it? The spare room, or some kind of room that he would live in the house that his parents weren't allowed in. The long room or the
Yeah.
spare
I
room or
can't.
something
Yeah,
like
I
that.
can't remember. They referred to it as something.
Yeah, the long room or something like that. And it was his, like, lair, and he thought it was his lair. And I'm sure that he'd fucking absolutely pull himself asunder inside in the room to to videos of Aaliyah. Do you know?
And you said there about a trigger word for people, like the autistic thing, and I remember thinking that straight away when I started to dive into his story. I mean, he apparently his I don't know, it was his mother had said that from a young age, like essentially for a want of a better way of explaining it, he was autistic about like dusting his room, hoovering his room, and cleaning his room every single day.
Yeah, so to say autism probably nowadays is it's like, oh man, I'm totally OCD for that. Would you not really have obsessive compulsive disorder? And I think there's, like, a lot of just like a preface for both of us if it's going to get published, like, to say, like, oh man, I was really fucking autistic about that. What I mean by it is, like, the pretty well known levels of I guess obsession, subjective obsession, and repetitive stuff, like needing to have a very strict schedule that repeats, like, or else there's, like, a feeling of discomfort. Like, that's what I mean. It's very reductive and not not indicative of the autism spectrum that people may fall under, and you get in trouble for saying shit like that. Also associating, like, those bad behaviors if someone has autism would also work in the reverse, where it's like, well, if somebody has autism, they're going to behave like this, and they're trying to move away from socially outcasting people who have that disorder, right? Or the condition. I don't even think it's a disorder. I think it's just like a different way of being. And I've changed my mind on how I view it. But this has all the hallmarks of somebody who has been traumatized. And like I said before, somebody who's been severely traumatized can go and do the RAASDC test and come out very, very high, even like past, positively autistic levels of measurement on these, these tests that you do, like, are you on the autism spectrum, and you do this
Yep.
test. Like, people who suffer trauma come out with positive results. People who suffer trauma come out with positive results for ADHD. All their behaviors, you answer a questionnaire and you say yes to all the things. It's like, right, would you have ADHD? It's like, I don't. But the way the brain copes with that stuff that has happened is it presents with all of those types of symptoms. And, they're going in for psychiatric evaluation and they're not being diagnosed properly, and they're being given medication for these conditions or treatment for these conditions that don't seem to be applicable. As far as I read, his parents, Allan Menzies' parents, were very against having him being diagnosed with anything, about being stigmatized with anything. And in fact, they refused school recommendations for assessment because they didn't want him to be like held back, or they didn't want him to have like a stigma against his name. I'm like, right, would you not think about getting him assessed after he's stabbing cunts up at lunchtime? Like, that's the kind of time when you're like, oh, we were wrong about that. Called it wrong. Let's get him assessed. And instead they just let him kind of fucking fester away for 3 years in solitary confinement, pretty much, in a juvenile facility, because he wasn't interacting with people. So, like, when he's crazy obsessed with a topic and he starts identifying with it and his mate starts poo-pooing it in front of his face, the reciprocal value of the intellectual property and his identity became, I think, too intertwined, and he ended up taking a criticism of the IP as like a judgment on his own character, and because he had no emotional resilience, of course he was going to flip out. And by all accounts, his mate McKendrick went home. Maria left the house and went home, and then went missing. Now, I personally don't think he ever left the house. I think he was killed there in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And he told, Menzies told his parents, oh yeah, he's gone home, and your mom was fucking brown bread upstairs, I think. But
this was something, actually, and I only thought about it after the fact, how this went on when they were supposedly in the house and whatever. Like, there was reports that McKendrick's tried to run out of the room and he chased him, or he went down to the kitchen and he got a knife and then went back up. And
yeah, that's what
yeah,
I don't think he left the room. I think he was just like, yeah, okay. Do you want something to drink? And then came back up and killed him
yeah,
as he sat
that
there.
other stuff was bollocks about, like, we fought this and we fought that. He probably internalized that. Man, do you know what I'm going to do with this fella now?
Yeah.
He's going to be the one I'm going to sacrifice. So apparently they have this big fight. McKendrick goes home. They have an argument. He tells him we don't want to be friends anymore. All this shit. McKendrick then isn't seen for a couple of days, and obviously the police get involved and they show up to Alan's house. They talk to him about, what's the story? You're the last person that's on my life. He admitted all that. Said, yeah, I was, and
So we
he's
had
like,
an
well,
argument and he left.
yeah.
So that's where we get the argument tale. So I don't think. Obviously, he's telling the cops like, yeah, and then he stormed out, and I tried to chase him, and said I'm sorry, and then he just left the house. Like, so all of that stuff. Like, I don't think he ever got out of the room, man. I think he said some shit about Leah, and your man fucking done him up. Like,
Yeah.
that's,
yeah.
you know,
They didn't have that that argument in that sense.
I don't think so.
And I had seen, like, from the police reports, apparently they believed him at the time. They were like, yeah, we had no further reason to believe that there was any issue, which I don't know, just seems a bit mad.
Aren't the cunt got away with it for 5 weeks? Your man
Like,
was missing for 5 weeks. Like, essentially, he got away with murder.
Yeah,
Allan Menzies had got away with murder. Like, got away with it, and only for he slipped up. Like, he would have got away clean. Like,
and
this
even
was planned for a really long time,
even the situation where, like, he's out in a shop and he comes across Thomas McKendrick's mum. She's out shopping or whatever, and he goes up to her with some cleaning product and he's like, do you think this would get blood stains out of the floor.
That's like somebody like looking for notice. It's like those killers that send the letters and go like, "You can't catch me." I think it was.
Yeah, do you think that's what that like? Was that a genuine slip up, or
I
was
think
that him kind of being like, I'm the fucking Riddler here?
yeah, I'm the Riddler. I think it was him testing the fucking. These are not the vampires you're looking for. Like I think he was very much showing off, and I think his hubris ended up getting him caught then as well.
Yeah, and do you think that translates into maybe him thinking as well? Now, I've transcended. Now I've done this thing, so I'm like fucking untouchable.
I am the vampire. I've done my
Yeah,
thing, and I've been blessed. Like who knows, man. Whatever makes the white stuff come out. Like this guy killed somebody, and I'd say he absolutely ruined his Mickey
yeah, 100%.
for days after that. He's 5 weeks, and he was getting. And every day he woke up and like not in jail, like absolutely raw dogging his own cock with delight.
And I always feel weird about maybe, drawing those lines between someone doing something like this and getting some sort of like weird sexual pleasure out of it. But there's definitely
That's all he's doing
he,
for.
he was, yeah, he was definitely getting off. I think on the fact that
Yeah.
like he had done this thing, and like I mean, who in their right fucking mind would walk up to the one of the parents and be like, "Do you think the blood stains and all now in my room? What do you think about that now? How would I clean them up?"
Same as Ian Huntley after he
Yeah,
killed those two girls, going up to the fucking press and going, "Oh, can I help? Yeah, I saw those two girls. They're from the school I work in. Any chance that can help?" Like you're like, "You fucking cunt." And he was helping the cops for days before they did anything about it. So I think it's absolutely on brand for someone who thinks he's an immortal vampire, who's been blessed by
yeah,
the queen of the damned to be now like an all powerful being, to go up and go, "Do you used to get blood out?" Like, what are you gonna
mm.
do? Tell the cops I've already got away with it? Like, it's like returning to the scene of the crime, man. And I guarantee he ran home after seeing his man and absolutely pulled the balls up himself.
Oh, 100%. And that it only intensifies from there, I think, as well, his belief in this, because he does that to her. So then from there, she contacts the police. They
Yeah.
obviously are like, just that's fucking mad weird. And maybe we should go back and talk to that fella again. They go back out to talk to him again, and they ask him, is it all right if we ask a few questions? Um, it, can we have a look around and all this shit? And he's just like, you know, cool as a cucumber. Yeah, no bother, and I'll have a look around.
No one did he clean and bleach the whole thing like, and there was nothing left, according to
And
him.
he's yeah, and he's like, yeah, no bother and all. And like they said, he was like super calm. He wasn't confrontational. He didn't seem like he was panicked. Um, and then they find this shirt and pants that are soaked in blood, and they bring him off. And I think at this point, they, I don't know if
Where
they,
did they find that again? I remember saying I better note that because it was quite interesting how they found it. It was like they found a piece of it or something. Where did they find the shirt and
yeah,
pants?
was that dug up outside somewhere?
Yeah, somebody accident. There was a piece of it found, and then they went,
Yeah,
"Oh, that's weird," because that was the clothes that he was supposed to have
yeah,
been
and
wearing.
and then from there, I think I'm not
They
sure if
went digging around, and then they
yeah,
found the buried clothes.
and they found the pants and the
Yeah.
shirt, both of them together,
So
both of them soaked in blood.
so I think, and I think they made the mental note of it to say, it wasn't just like a spur of the moment thing. It wasn't like a reaction to him talking shit about the
Yeah,
movie, and it was just like I think the whole thing was planned, and I think the Aaliyah thing was like or the Akasha, Lord Akasha thing, Queen Akasha was like a functional narrative device to allow him to commit these crimes that he wanted to commit anyway. And he kept a prize like a serial killer does. He kept a little bit of the clothes, which was found. And then they went, right, well, let's start digging. And they started digging up the garden, which, they saw some earth that wasn't fully, flattened
hmm
out. And they found the fucking clothes in a plastic bag, and they still had the stuff on it. Like, why he didn't burn them, why he didn't dump them, why he would bury them in his own property. Like, silly bastard. But, like, found. And then they went looking in the vicinity, like further out, like parks and different places, looking for the body. And apparently, without being seen by anybody, the motherfucker ended up putting his mate into a wheelbarrow and wheeling him in the middle of the night off to bury him in a shallow grave. I'm like,
I found that.
how did he get away with that for 5 weeks? Like, is that like a testament to his ingenuity, or is it a fucking scathing indictment of the Scottish police force?
Like, think about right now, right? If you were to be in the house and you were to have one of the lads over in the room with you there, and you were to stab him 40 times, right, and smash his head open with a hammer and eat bit of his brain and all, do you imagine the process now of you having to get him down into a wheelbarrow and wheeling him off without your missus or anybody going like, Gordo, what the fuck you up to?
Dude,
Like,
I'm half. It's late now. I'm half contemplating sleeping in the spare bed so I don't have to walk downstairs. Never mind, clean up a whole room covered in some other cunt's blood, and then bring him down in the nip and him in the nip and burn both of our clothes and then bring him off in a fucking wheelbarrow. No.
and
Somebody would see you.
you're definitely right, I think, in saying that this was thought out as well, because I think he was looking at that when he, whatever, was visited by her or thought he was or whatever. And she said, you need to kill someone. He's thinking straight away, okay, who do I have easy access to I'm going to be able to blindside, right? I've no friends. No one likes me. I'm a fucking weirdo. Probably not going to kill me, ma or dad. So
I need somebody else who
yeah,
has no friends, who had no one coming looking for him.
let me
I'd
kill this fella.
I'd say that fucking having her come to him in the middle of the night with the suggestion, I'd say he was in the fucking throes of a fucking belly boxing session, and he was just like rolodexing through all of Aaliyah dressed in her
Yeah.
Princess Leia fucking Queen of the Damned outfit. He was just like mate baiting, and the narrative went into his head, and it was just like, oh yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. And I think the violence and the sex together for a lot of these type of dudes, it's interchangeable, and I think like
Yeah.
masturbating about somebody killing people, it's only a short hop to masturbate about you killing the people. Like, if you're, what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't articulate that properly, but you know what I'm saying. Like, it's not a far leap to go like, okay, well, I need to fucking kill somebody to have the white stuff come out.
And there's definitely I suppose, for want of a better word, like a power there when you're like mid fucking, as you put it, making the white stuff come out, and you start to go like, jeez, I could fucking run through a wall now, and you have this rush of emotions, and he's like, right, could you imagine the amount of white stuff that's going to come out when I fucking smash his head in? It's going to be glass.
Yeah, it's like when you're just having a normal wank. As a normal dude, you and I, we already talked about how vanilla our fucking experiences are, and then you're just like, oh, I wonder if I fucking maybe get something warm. Is there something warm? And you just want to change the flavor up. You're just like, is there no towel? I wonder if I put a fucking pillow in the microwave. No. Can I put a blanket in the oven? No. Fucking hell. I wonder if I dip me balls in a cup of hot tea. Would that do it? Like, you just kind of try to think of an extra thing, because you're just like, just for this one, I just need an extra piece of fucking like an extra stimuli. And for your man, it's like, oh yeah, killing somebody and drinking their blood and then fucking jizzing.
Yep.
Like, it's not a short hop when you're already into that violent, habitual.
Yeah, you're already
fucking
there,
stuff.
basically. Like,
basically, yeah.
So they find this shit anyway. They bring it off. It gets tested. They find out that Thomas's DNA is on it. Then they go back, I think, and confront him. He says he has nothing to do with him being missing. And I think in the meantime, before they locate his body, I had seen some reports that he like OD'd or something and ended up in hospital in the middle of all this.
After the interrogation, so they came to his house and went, where's your mate? We know we suspect you. So there was 3 visits. And the first visit was like, here, your friend's missing for a couple of days. He's like, no, I'm me. And then like 4 weeks later, after the report from the mother, they went back over. Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, when they couldn't find nothing, but like knowing that they may be on his trail, he took an overdose and an attempted suicide attempt. And then they went, well, it's definitely him. And then they started the big search and found the bloody clothes, and then went and ended up finding the body.
Which was not far from Like he didn't even. Obviously, I know he has this fucking fella in a wheelbarrow. Like, so he's not gonna go too far, but like
Yeah.
he did. Like he buries him in a shallow grave, like a stone's throw from his house,
Yeah.
nearly.
Yeah. And they find the body, and they find that there's 10 marks around the head from being struck with a hammer, and then 40 stab wounds, as you said before.
It's just mad.
So, like, in my mind, he's talking shit about Aaliyah, and your man just pulls out a hammer and just starts battering the head off him. And then he's like, well, he's dead already.
Stab the shit out.
Yeah, but like slow, like fucking,
Yeah.
Metallica, like, oh yeah, like bloodlet and stuff. And he ended up nicking his neck as well, and he ended up confessing to letting a lot of blood out into it, and he drank 2 full glasses of your man's blood, and then ended up cracking open a part of his skull that was already kind of open from getting lashed out of it with a hammer, and he ate some of his brains and some of the tissue on the inside of the skull.
Which is just.
So, like, that's, that's the
1 minute you're wanking over a vampire, the next minute you're bashing your mate's brains in, probably wanking.
bashing your mate's brains in and making a hole big enough to scoop out a piece of his brain. What I was wondering is, did he eat the brain at all, or was it just he was scooping out a bit of your man's brain to make room for to stick his dick into it? Like, who knows what else was done to that lad?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
to make them white stuff come out is a dark and mysterious process.
Yeah, because I don't think, well, at least I can't imagine with the sort of mindset and like the way he was up until that point. I can't just see him smashing his head in, poking around his brain a bit, stabbing him, and then being like, right then,
That's
that's
it.
that. There's more to that, I think, than fucking.
Oh yeah.
He's probably like in his mind seeing Aaliyah and shit standing over him, being like, good man and all. Oh, yeah, big Mickey on you and all. Good lad.
Depersonalized and disassociated from like humanity, and his best mate, who's now like a dead body still warm in front of him. Like, that's not a fucking easy thing to come to terms with.
Mhm.
And you think that people wouldn't do that, and you think that we may be flippant in our suggestions about these things, like the speculations about these things. But in the case of Luca Magnotta, he did all that shit to that motherfucker, that poor dead lad, and filmed the whole thing, so you can actually watch somebody doing it in real time, doing all these types of things that we're talking about, like slowly cutting and, fucking doing the amputations and doing all the fucking crazy Dr. Mengele shit to a body that's essentially still alive. That guy was, when Luca Magnotta was doing it to him. You think people wouldn't do that? You think we're speculating, talking shite, and just suggesting like funny, weird stuff? This is exactly what motherfuckers do. Like,
Yep.
fact, they do this
Like
shit.
that Luca Magnotta thing, like, I mean,
Crazy.
yeah, but it just goes to show you that, like, I think you using the word transcend is quite interesting and very fitting for stuff like this, because there's a film. Oh God, the name of it is gone. Martyrs, sorry.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, and like the shit at the end, like where they're like
Yeah.
skinning them and tying them up, and it's that whole idea of like they want to see
That's true.
them
A
kind of,
rewatch for me anyway. Fucking hell.
they want to see them like transcend and kind of go to the other side, and then be able to bring them back a bit to be able to say like, yeah, this is what I seen and blah blah. I'm not saying that that's what these people intend on doing, but there's definitely a feeling of like, even with Luca Magnotta, like there's a feeling of like he's gone so deep into this now, he sort of transcended any kind of reality, and he's in this weird like dream state of like, this is class and all. I'm
Yeah.
fucking cutting him up and all, and they're not like, he's not in the room murdering someone. He's in some weird state where it's like this is this like sexual deadly.
The wank realm.
Yeah, it's just like this mad, like everyone, look, I don't care, male, female, anyone, that split second where you're literally about to spill your muck and you have that weird like cross-eyed toes curling, yes, that's what, and you're out of body. That must be where they are. Like,
The French call it the petit mort, the little death. Like, you go into a transcendental state. It's the shit that Sting tries to extend for hours and hours by not jizzing. Like, it's a place where everybody has gone some people stay there longer, some people get to visit more often.
Mm.
But like it is the wank realm. It's like the fucking. Do you remember in the Ghostbusters cartoon when they
Mm-hmm.
used to dump all the ghosts into the big round thing in the basement, and then one of the episodes we get to go in there because Slimer gets put in there by accident, and it's like loads of like floating rocks and purple sky and all the ghosts that all the Ghostbusters have ever caught ever. Like imagine a place like that, but with like where everybody's like wank fantasies live, like loads of versions of like I don't know Jenna Jameson and Pamela
Yeah.
Anderson, and it's just like waterfalls of cum and like dick trees and like fanny flap grass and all, like the wank realm. Like that's where it's like a fucking an alternate place for what's your man's name, Finn from what's that TV show? Jake the dog and Finn. It's adventure time. Yeah, so like it's like a world of adventure time where all the fucking trees are dicks and the fucking rivers are jizz and fanny juice and all that stuff. Like that's where this motherfucker was, in a transcendental state of murderous rage. Bundy said he used to come across him and his eyes would go shark like black. What's your man's name? The Russian guy. Chikatilo used to say that he'd go into like a furious rage. Jeffrey Dahmer the same, Ed Kemper the same. Like they all had this thing where they go out of their body and commit the crimes and then come back. It's like it's depersonalization. Like it's it shuts off the fucking moral source code of your head and allows you to do these terrible things to other people. Like,
And I was probably guilty of this years ago as well, before I started really deep dive into a lot of these things and the real stories behind them and the reasons why people do shit. And I think that a lot of the mainstream audience, and especially even still now with things like Netflix, I feel like have changed the game with these documentaries that they bring out. While they're very well done, I do still think that they haven't cracked the explanation of, like, because I think a lot of people think, you see that, or you go on YouTube and you see all these like true crime YouTubers and whatever, and I think there's still a degree of, he's just fucking using that as an excuse for fucking smashing his missus head in, rating her dead body. And it's like, no, I do actually believe like that these lads kind of go into this, like you said, like they have to dissociate from to do shit like that. Like you can't be in your right mind and going, yeah, I'm just chatting to Gordo there. Now I'm gonna go chop me Mickey off and go down and murder me granny.
yeah, like
Like
some fucking
you've gotta
Pain
go.
Olympics shit. Like,
Yeah, like you've got to
yeah.
go somewhere else. Like,
But you know what it is? And I think after doing, I don't know, 100 true crime episodes, like looking into the darkest parts of humanity, both like political, psychological, historical, that what you put in, you get out. And I really don't believe there's such a thing as like born evil. Do you know? There's a certain set of things that you can show to a person, like in Clockwork Orange, that will make them act a certain way. The American government have tried to research it for 70 years to try and make people be like, sleeper cell assassins and fucking, mind control subjects and stuff like that. Psychic spies and transmitting their consciousnesses across different countries to spy on cunts and all. Like anything that has been thought to be possible, they tried experiments on it. So I think if you're putting like, we're just a fucking what's the best description of a human being? It's like we're just a skeleton wearing a meat suit being powered by 6 pounds of electric porridge. Like that's what we are, and like the body is fucking weird in that way that like you don't concentrate on breathing in or out or digesting your food or beating your heart or making shit come out of your arse, except for the last leg.
mm-hmm.
Most of it, like your body, if you broke your fucking thigh bone, if you don't get that set in a few minutes, like your leg will fold in up on top of itself and you'll have to have your leg amputated because the muscles are so strong and you don't even realize that. Like if you fucking get a head injury and you damage a part of your brain, your fucking electric porridge that has all the places where language live, and you can't speak anymore, you're like, like 6 months to a year of speech therapy, and another completely unrelated section that nobody knows what it does or why it's there, but a whole other section of your electric porridge just starts learning how to do that, and you're able to speak again, and it just takes over from the bit that was scooped out. One guy's lost 70% of his brain, and he's still walking around like, and he looks like somebody who's after fucking, like a fat child is after getting into the Ben and Jerry's. That's what his fucking head looks like. And he's still walking around, and everyone's like, how is this even possible? So,
Yeah.
like, whatever you put into a human body and a human brain, you're going to get back out. And I think, like, a lot of these motherfuckers have bad shit happen, and the results are these things.
Yeah, like it even when you had mentioned about the Americans and stuff like that, and I can't remember. I don't know if you'll know off the top of my head, and I only came across it recently. Was it one of those fucking prisons that were made during the Iraq War there? And there was this big scandal.
Oh, Abu Ghraib.
Yes, like when man, right? I know I've seen right.
Yeah.
And
The pictures where they're all, like, pointing with the fingers, and they have them
yeah,
doing
and
naked pyramids and
I'm not
electrifying their dicks now.
yeah, like, and I'm not saying this to try and be like, I've seen some lot of stuff and all. I have all the achievements and all, as in like mad shit on the internet and the dark
Yeah,
web
I
and all
mean,
this weird, horrible shit. Like,
yeah.
and I thought like things. I was like, don't really unsettle me. Like, I kind of I sit here now having this conversation with you, and I'm like, yeah, that's fucked and all, but nothing really gives me like the shivers or like the creeps. I remember seeing there's an image of they have a lad hooked up to some sort of electric shock thing, and he's standing on a box.
Wearing a white hood.
Oh, dude, that thing that gave me the fucking, and it's like what you said, like it's like the shit that people can do and will do to other people knows no bounds.
It knows no bounds, but it comes from somewhere, and I don't think anyone is born evil, and I think a lot of people are, like, products of their environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's stuff like, the now very outdated, like, nature versus nurture conversation about homosexuality.
Mm-hmm.
There is a legitimacy to the nature versus nurture argument, and it was superimposed on something like homosexuality when being gay was thought to be something evil, or was purported to be something evil or inhuman 50, 60 years ago. And they were like, yeah, if you do that, then they'll come out like this. And, like, obviously, science and biology has come a long way. We found out that is not the case.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a nurture versus nature version for a lot of other, like, dispositions that the human body or the human brain or like a human can do, right? And I think people will like see something that they think is morally abhorrent or morally evil and go, oh, what happened to him when he was a child? And years ago it used to be like, look at them gay lads. What way were they brought up? I bet you they had loads of sisters and their ma was too involved. And I was like, yeah. Cool, just because their sexuality is that way. But when you see, like, a young lad and he's like laughing, choking cats around the neighborhood, and then, like, wanking over their body, over the cat's dead bodies, like, because he just got a boner from taking another thing's life, that's when you should be like, hey, come here. What's with fucking little Jimmy?
Yeah.
Like, little Jimmy's fucking having a wank over a cat he just strangled. Like, well, how many sisters does he have? Is his ma too involved? Like, I loved the way that it focused all of their fucking all of their vitriol and all of the the media machine at, like, oh, them gay, you gotta get rid of them gay, and they do nothing about all the motherfuckers that are, like, baiting their wives, and they're fucking chronic alcoholics, or they're, like, manic depressives, or they're, like, killing themselves by driving a car into a wall because they didn't want to bring shame on the family by dancing at the end of a rope, so they pretend to die in a car crash by suicide instead. Like, none of that is talked about in the nature versus nurture conversation. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, all of those things are because of the bad nurture or the lack of nurture that they got. None of it is nature. Like, no one kills themselves naturally. We're not lemmings, like, and I don't think we're made to inflict pain on one another, and I think that hurt people, and something happened to this Allan Menzies man to make him into the thing that he was, like, be it even the lack of treatment for something as easy as easily, you know, treatable or identifiable as a schizophrenia or some variation thereof. Like, he was left on his own, no
Yeah,
resilience and no
like
support.
I have an uncle who is paranoid schizophrenic for something as long as I've known, anyway, as long as I've been alive, and I've seen some scary situations and scary things happen with him. So, uh, anyone who thinks it's outside the realm of possibility that this lad was suffering from something and then it started to spiral and he just didn't get the help or the attention that should have been put on his behavior and whatever. I mean, like, even afterwards when he was being taken to court, I think he told one of the police who were with him, oh, I may get 20 years or 30 years or life or whatever, but it's grand because I have his soul.
Jesus.
And it's like, and he's like sending letters home. I think before he was like properly sentenced, he was like sending letters signed Vamp and like telling his parents and all, yeah, I'd kill again and all if I get out. And it's just like, Jesus, like this is like,
Yeah, I think there was only one way he was getting out of that prison. It was in a bag.
yeah, like that didn't happen overnight. Like he didn't, like you said, like none of this happened overnight. This was a
Yeah.
long process to get
It
to there.
wasn't blessed and adorned upon him like by on high. Like, he just woke up one day like, I have a
Yeah.
voice from God and she told me to do this, and then
Um,
it's coming from somewhere.
he gets sentenced,
Yeah.
and there's not really a lot about this, and there's probably, if you were to really dig and find, there's probably a whole other podcast and story
Yeah.
behind the next part of this, which is he spends about 12 months, I think it is 13 months, in prison, and then he's found dead in a cell. Um, then there's an investigation opened surrounding his whole death, and there's a load of stuff, man, that I didn't realize that were kind of going on there in the background
Yeah, like
before
what?
he.
Like what? I didn't know. I didn't read into
Yeah,
it.
so they launched this investigation, and once they started to dig apart everything, so when he first went into prison, they didn't get a full history on him. Um, he didn't go through all the protocols that a normal prisoner would go through, especially someone who has potential history of like mental illness and all this shit going on. They didn't do any of that. Um, he didn't have a case manager when they brought him to the segregation unit.
Fucking
Apparently, anyone who goes to there needs to have a case manager. They need to have someone to kind of, I guess, be there on their behalf, even though they're
yeah,
employed by the
an
state.
advocate. Yeah.
Um,
Where, where
the
where where was he in prison again? Was it Belmar she went to prison, or was it somewhere in Scotland or something?
Yeah, and I think they went to go. I think after 12 months, then they were looking to move him, and that's what started all this
That's what I
kind of.
thought. Yeah, he was going to be moved to a psychiatric facility because he was self
Yeah,
harming and stuff in the cell.
yeah, and
Anyway,
like they, when he was in the segregation unit, the staff didn't check. They didn't perform like they have a checklist, I assume. Um, he had this razor blade, like he was after cutting his arms and
yeah,
he was after smearing blood places, and they reckon that's what he used to cut the bed sheets and all.
yeah.
So like there was a whole question of like how the fuck did he, out of everyone, how was he the one that like wasn't checked on and we
So
didn't
it's still
follow anything?
neglect, man. The same fucking shit that got him out of juvie and straight back into school with no extra provisions, no extra fucking no therapy, no supervision, even no fucking caseworker, no social worker. Like, people were, look, dude, if you're a 14-year-old, you're stabbing cunts up in the fucking halls in your school, like, your parents have some fucking questions to answer, and none of that happened.
And even his mother Linda, she afterwards, I think I don't know whether to like make statements or they give more info, like a backstory, I guess, on what he's been like. And she said that he had OD'd several times
Yeah,
after taking boxes and boxes of paracetamol and shit.
loads of
There was
suicide
another,
attempts. Sure, suicide ideation was his fucking thing. Like, so what's the best cure, Or what's the best? What am I trying to say? What's the best like green light for someone who doesn't want to live in the body that they're in? Like if you were told like when you die, you're going to come back as immortal. Like you'll die a human and be resurrected an immortal, all-powerful vampire, which all the Anne Rice books say, like, that's how you have to die first, and then
Yeah,
you
yeah.
drink the blood of another vampire, and, blah, 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 and then you come back and you're, but you have to do that dying thing, and, like, Interview with the Vampire, like, and Brad Pitt's rolling around the ground, like, what's happening to me? And you're like, oh, shut up, you good-looking cunt. That's what he wanted. He wanted to die and come back. Like, Sean Roper in the class and all, of course, this motherfucker was disturbed.
Yeah, yeah. And
Disturbed
like there was another
and
incident where he
neglected.
was in the kitchen. Yeah, he was in the kitchen with his ma, and like they were like talking or something. Shit, it wasn't even like they weren't arguing, they weren't having any sort of, and he just randomly picks up a kitchen knife and just slashes his arm. And he's just like, "There you are. Anyway, ma, look, I'm grand."
And
Now
there's
that
only
to me, like I feel like if that was me, I'd be like, okay, this chap needs serious fucking help. Like that's mad.
there's only so many times people that do that as cries for help before they'll be successful in their attempt. Do you know?
Hmm.
Like nobody's doing nothing for this motherfucker. Like, and I know he
And
killed somebody, and boo hoo. How many times could that have been prevented by other people? Obviously, he wasn't
yeah,
capable of his own like autonomy or his own emotional regulation, or in some ways, probably not responsible for his physical actions. At a certain point, his
mhm.
behavior was the responsibility of somebody else's negligence.
Yeah, and I think that scene, like the whole way through this, like even up until the end, um, they wanted to move him from location to location, and apparently he wasn't happy with that. And where he was incarcerated, they wanted to move him to another wing, and he told them that he didn't want to because there was people there or something that would attack him when he went there. I'm not sure. There was no real specifics on names or what had gone on, but
Paranoid schizophrenia, man. Everyone's out to get
yeah,
you.
he was
You've
like
enemies
telling them.
everywhere, and
Yeah, he was like telling them if I go there, there's a group of lads and all, and we don't get on and all this shit. And then
vampire
they said,
hunters.
yeah, like they sent him back to his room, and he's like smashing coffee jars, and apparently he was like really pissed off then for a few days about all this, and they had different people go into him within the wing he was in. They had a not a psychiatrist, like a counselor. She went in to talk to him. They had another prisoner who kind of worked closely with all different prisoners, going in having the chats with him, I'm on use and all, and what's going on with you. And apparently he just kept saying he didn't want to leave. He just wanted to be left where he was. He was either settling in. And this built and built and built over a number of days. And everyone was saying, like, he was a loner. He was like super strange. He wasn't like most prisoners in there. Um, there's also reports that there was marks on his arms and on his body and on his back and stuff before he was finally transferred to that segregation unit, where he ended up doing away with himself. There was reports of him having all these marks all over him, and I think he said he like fell or something, and it was apparently the woman noted it as very odd. Um, Again, like I don't know, is this something he's doing to himself, or
Yeah, was he throwing himself around the room in protest, like bashing himself off the beds and jumping off the top bunk and
yeah,
just
like
like
it's hard to know. Like
self-harming?
there's other people out there that reckon like they were kicking the fuck out of him because he was a weirdo and he was.
Or maybe, I mean, not that, not throwing shit at a very difficult job, like a prison warden is a very difficult job. But maybe he was acting a bollocks and they were just like, behave yourself, and he was trying to bite him and shit, and they were just baiting the shit out of him to make him
Yeah.
comply. Because obviously he's in a very agitated state. He's trying to, like, they're trying to give him food, trying to give him this, and he's like, if they're trying, like, do you know how hard it is to fucking try and restrain somebody, trying to tie somebody down or get him into a restraint, a restraint garment or whatever. Like, you're going to be hurting motherfuckers. Like, even you
Mhm.
see cops arresting people, and if they struggle even a tiny bit, like, You get fucking broken arms and
Face
broken
planted.
wrists, and yeah, like, so obviously he's, he's in an agitated state, and they're trying to get him ready for movement, or for relocation. Like,
And look, I don't know if this is the case, like, but
again, the
when
cycle of abuse is perpetuated on into the prison system, and he was used to fucking, obviously, this abusive thing all through his whole life, and this is like, yeah, typical, this is the way I've always been treated, and blah 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 blah. And how many people are in prison is that's their story? Like, they come
yeah,
from a shit
sure.
life where their parents treated them shit when they were kids. They got in trouble when they were teenagers. They got treated like shit and got the shit kicked out of them, or kicked the shit out of people. Went into adulthood and crime, shit, violence, abuse, fucking misuse, and then they go
Yeah.
into prison, and then it's the same thing again. And then, how do you expect a motherfucker to be better? Like, if they don't ever
And
get treated any different.
I think he actually. So I think it was like wing, say A, B, and C, and he was in wing B, and they wanted to move him to wing A, and he said, "Oh no, look, I'm not going to get on well over there. There's such and such a crowd and a group, and they're from my area or some shite like that or something." And I think he asked to be moved to wing C as like I suppose, a compromise if he really had to. And they said there was no room in that wing, I think, and he'd have to go to the segregation unit. Now, apparently, according to other prisoners, that you don't get put in the segregation unit as like a waiting area or anything like that. There would be no reason for a prisoner to go there unless he was like mad, basically, like they
Yeah.
weren't able to deal with him. Now, which from what you've just said, like that could very well be the case. Like he could have been in there like smashing himself around the room like a lunatic every night. Um, but when he was moved to the segregation unit, like there's a lot of protocols as well, like all these different checks and health checkups and photographs to be taken of his body and searched and all this shit.
None of it was
You're
done.
supposed to have a minimum 3-man escort,
Yeah.
and none of this happened.
No.
Apparently he walked to the unit himself with someone with him.
Unprecedented. With a not even a supervising officer. It was like a case or a key worker or whatever they call it. So it wasn't
Which
even
just seems a bit mad, like.
wasn't even a prison warden, like from one prison warden to another, with somebody who's not equipped. If he freaked out, there's nobody that would be able to restrain him or anything like that. Like, what the fuck? Like, real negligence on
Yeah,
everybody's part with this lad.
yeah. And then again, now I don't know how true any of this is. He was put in apparently cell 5 there, which didn't have proper toilets or something. It had like this weird like fucking pot or something to shit and piss in, which again just seems a bit mad weird. Like, and it's like, are all these things not, like, when you look at it now, I think as a big picture, it's like, Jesus, lads, like, he's really fucking, we're trying to make him like, again, like you said, like he's probably getting put in this cell now against his will in a sense. Like he wanted to stay where he was, but he eventually gives up and says, "Look, I'll go here." Then he gets into the fucking thing. Then they close the door on him. He's like, "All right, I have to shit and piss in a pot now as well."
I was
Great.
grand where I was. Yeah.
Yeah, the usual shit. Look, I'm being treated like shit again, of course.
Same shit, different bucket.
Yeah, like, you know what I mean? And it's like, it just seems like so many different things failed him here.
Yeah, so much so that the Her Majesty's Prison Service was sued by his family for negligence. Like, big case. I don't even think it's fully sorted yet. Has it been?
I don't think so. Not from what I could see.
Yeah, I couldn't find it. It's still in process. So, like, of all the things that let him down, like, at every hurdle,
Yeah.
this man was let down. Doesn't excuse a murder. And I often find myself saying that to my true crime episodes, man. It's like, you're trying to humanize the inhumane.
Yeah.
And go like, why? I'm also, the subtext in all of my episodes is also, there's no such thing as evil. Hurt people. Something happened here. Let's try and understand it. It's not like a titillating story of like, and then he did this, and then he did that. Can you believe it? Oh, join us next week. Like, something happened to these motherfuckers to make them do this shit. Like, what happened to him? And the stuff that we don't know from when he was a child because it wasn't documented. If it was anything like the stuff from when it was documented, even a little bit, as a child,
there's more to that story, I think.
That's fucked up. Like, we get, this guy comes on the map, like his on the map of shitty things that happen, and like a red light, like boop 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 boop, like that. It's like, oh, that's the thing I was trying to say the other day, like in one of the episodes we're recording here. It sounded like it was like justifying murder,
Mm.
and I'm going like, the only reason that these motherfuckers come up on our radar to talk about them at all is because they were successful in committing a murder, and then they were incarcerated, or they died in incarceration or killed themselves before they were fucking charged and convicted or whatever. Like, but they're famous murderers who kill people famously in some circumstances which make them stand out from just being a regular person who kills people. That's not to say how many people, how many thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people out there have been treated in exactly the same way, who just didn't manage to kill somebody, but still have the negative ramifications of those treatments playing out in their life. Still, drug addicts, homeless people, the mentally ill, fucking, down and outs, and people who can't socialize, or fucking social outcasts, or like all of these, like all the cunts on Skid Row, like all those tents that you see in Venice Beach, and all the motherfuckers living on Skid Row in LA, and all the homeless people living in New York and Philadelphia, and all these videos you see on YouTube, like a car driving by and it's just dozens and dozens and dozens of junkies top to bottom, all fucking goofing in the middle of the day. Like, that's not CGI. Like, that's not holograms and shit. Like, that's like real motherfuckers that have had a whole lifetime of really terrible shit happen. But not every one of them gets a podcast. It's just because this cunt managed to fucking, focus his whole life on this movie, which just happens to be in the genre of your podcast. That's the only reason we're talking about him. Otherwise, he's just some Scottish cunt who fucking killed his mate with a hammer. But the fact that it just matches with the narrative that we're talking about him, even that people get to hear his story, it's just, there's so many people getting treated like that don't
they don't get a look in.
Don't get a look in. They don't get any attention for it.
Yeah.
And this lad, from top to bottom, from the time his red light came on, at least, was treated horrifically, like terribly treated, when it could have all been prevented and deaths could have been stopped and all of that stuff, including his own. And it just wasn't. They just wasn't.
Like, I mean, he I think he was the one apparently who came up with the idea to go to the segregation unit, and like all the other prisoners were like, it was when they interviewed all them afterwards, whoever was around him, they were like, that's real weird, like, because that's seen as a punishment, and being brought to the segregation unit, you lose your privileges, your possessions.
It's been on lockdown, like, it's like,
like solitary confinement. Like, he had arranged visits, they didn't take place. I don't know, just so many things that seem mad weird about that whole situation, and it just makes me wonder, is it a case of, like you said, was he just wild and they weren't able to cope with him or deal with him? It was like, you know what, fuck him into that whatever there and just close the door, let him shit in the pot, whatever. He's a pest, he's annoying, can't cope. Or
maybe it's a continuation of his already demonstrated behaviour of self-harm, where he's like, I want the worst treatment possible, I don't deserve any better. Another
and it could be because when he was found, hadn't he smeared the word justice in blood on the wall?
Like, that's like a deep kernel of guilt. Maybe he had a moment of lucidity, and the feelings of power and the feelings of, being a powerful vampire who's, transcended humanity and the blah 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 blah, this fucking god complex, or this, superiority ideology that he had adopted, maybe faded away while he was in the fucking thing, and the realization of, like, the reality of his existence, that, oh, I'm shitting in a pot and I'm in segregation, oh fuck, and the guilt got to him, and he's just like, well, look, this is all I'm good for. And that suicidal ideation that he was going on with for his whole teens, possibly being triggered by being in solitary confinement from when he was in the youth services from 14 to 17. Like, he's like, oh, well, shit, I know where this is going. I know what this is going to be like. And I remember being in it for 3 years, and now I'm in it for ever. Fuck this, I'm out.
Ever is a long time.
Ever is a long ass time.
And I had seen, like, a few other little things, like he talked about in jail before all this, like he supported, there's another case, a Matthew Hardman, who had killed a 90-year-old grandmother, similar kind of a thing, was all mad into his vampires and all this shit and thought he was going to be immortal. and cut her open and ripped her heart out and wrapped it in newspaper and put it on a silver platter and left it alongside of her body, and then used kitchen utensils and something else and made all crosses all around her body, you know?
Fucking hell.
Oh yeah, and this fellow was like in support of. He was kind of like, well, sure. Look, there was apparently now he was telling some of
Like a
the other
vampire
prisoners.
cult or something like it. I'm
Yeah,
doing this for the Clydesdale one or whatever. We got a free Allan Menzies.
yeah. No, I don't know. He apparently was saying like, ah, sure. Look, they were all talking about it. It was like the scandal at the time. This dude had done this, and he was like, well, sure. There's no point in him ripping her heart out and all if he wasn't going to drink the blood out of it and squeeze it and do whatever.
Well, this is
It
the
was
thing.
worthwhile.
I think for a 90-year-old woman, she's probably on the warfarin. She's probably on the blood thinners, and the blood would. It's just like watered down whiskey or whatever for a vampire. It's like it's kind of the same, but it's a bit poor quality, like watered down alcohol. You know? It's just like nah.
Could have
I
picked
can
a better
taste the
heart, like in
no.
fairness.
I can taste the antibiotics and I can taste the blood thinners. No, it's not good. It's tainted.
But
90-year-olds
there's a
doing
lot
that.
of like, you know, I think to tie back into, I guess, the wraparound before we finish up, you know, about maybe his decision to kill his best mate or his so-called best mate and all that stuff. Like there's loads of different stories of stuff like that happening. Like there's another case of a German couple who I think were like Satanists and into vampirism and all this shit. And they had a friend who was like quite a, I suppose, a funny guy and kind of the life of the party and this and that. And this couple used to sleep in a coffin and all this shit. And they had these visions that Satan had come to him and said, you know, you need to sacrifice someone, you need to do this, you need to do that, and all, you'll be immortal and all this. And they chose him because he was quite funny and he would make quite a good, like a jester or a clown for Satan. And he'd see that as this great gesture and it'd be great and it'd be this and that. You know? Yeah, and it just sort of makes me wonder. Like, I do think, like you said, like these people are in this weird, like, dream state of.
What the fuck? Yeah, they're not seeing the world as it is. They're seeing it as they are. That's like saying,
Yeah,
"Oh man,
like.
Satan came to me in a dream, and he said that he needed a good defender for his five-a-side Sunday league. So I killed me mate, like, cause he's one of the best defenders I've ever seen. Like, now he's down with Satan, and you know they're going to win the league. Or you're like, what the fuck? That's bonkers.
Yeah, it's just mad. Like,
Everybody knows
so.
that Satan would never play football on a Sunday. It's the holy day. Like, come on.
So I
Silly
suppose then
baby shit.
in ending this whole story of him, which I feel like that there's probably way
Oh,
more
oh,
that, yeah, has to be.
so much more. And because it's a Scottish case, I know I'm kind of blaming the vagueness of the information on that. But like, if it was an American case, there'd be reams of information
Mm.
about this guy. Like, you know,
Um, what's your final thoughts then? Is it just a failing of his parents? Did more potentially go on there? Were they doing some mad shit to him? I don't even mean like abusing him, but
no,
maybe abusing him in the sense of like, fuck him, maybe all right, no, and
yeah,
just
neglect is abuse, man. Do you know?
yeah.
I think he was failed at every step of the way. It seems, and that there was so many times when, so at least something could be done. At least some kind of interventional treatment could be done to stop him from ultimately killing somebody and then killing himself very, very reasonably shortly afterwards.
Yeah.
Like it was two lives they lost there for not interfering, and possibly a third. You know, a 14-year-old stabbing a child in a school should set the fucking world on fire.
Yep.
And look at Dunblane. Do you know? Look at Columbine. Like, that was the time that shit was happening, and it was everywhere. Did we get so desensitized to it that like kids stabbing each other in schools doesn't make the headlines? I know that there's kids getting shot in schools, kids getting stabbed in schools all over America. Stabbings have gone up in the UK, like something shocking. Like, pandemic obviously has brought all these statistics down, but before Pando,
Mm-hmm.
crazy amounts of assaults in schools, and it only comes up on the radar. It only comes up on the international radar, say for us here in Ireland, if it's like 4 or more. If it's a mass shooting, then
Yeah.
it becomes a news item. But like, one kid shoots another kid over some fucking, I don't know, he bought a couple of ounces of weed and didn't pay him, and it's like, I gotta fucking show up here. I gotta make sure that no one thinks I'm a bitch. and this young lads end up fucking going to jail and harming themselves and others over kind of bullshit because the system fails them and still lets them down. And sometimes parents are not able for that kind of shit. Like, there's too much going on in the world sometimes, and I think that particularly this young fella was let down at various stages, and a court case going to the prison service is probably the least caustic outcome of this. Like, that they're like, yeah, and they might have to pay a few bob and that's it. But how many Allan Menzies are there in the prison system in the world? How many people are in there?
You're never going to hear about, because they don't have that headline of like, Queen of the Damned, fucking murderer.
That's what I said. We're doing a podcast. That's the only reason we're talking
Yeah.
about these particular people. There's
Yeah,
loads and loads and loads and loads of people who've been treated really, really, really badly, who are in the potential for doing like shitty things on a very small scale. I know I'm talking about, like, somebody who's treated bad and who never ever gets it sorted out, and then passes on a whole lot of shit to, I'm going to say him, but passes on a whole lot of shit to his wife and then on to his child. And then his child ends up having like a really shit first like 15 years until they get their shit together. And then they're carrying around the trauma that was given to them by their father, who was given to by his father. And it's just this thing, like, there's a certain time when all that stuff kind of can stop, and we're living in a time when people are really engaging with mental health services and treatments for not feeling so great, and trying to identify the reasons why and making behavioural changes and making which end up making societal changes. And I think that, like, the more kind of these things we see, the easier they are to do like a post-mortem is probably a bad term, but to do like a post-mortem on the situation, to figure out like why this happened and analyze this stuff, which is why I like doing the true crime episodes, because if there's somebody acting with any of those symptoms in my life, then I'm like, hey man, come here, listen, is everything cool? Like, let's fucking, and it doesn't have to end in murder. It just has to end in someone like feeling really shit. And oftentimes that ends up fucking leading to suicide. And sure, when somebody's dead from suicide, there's not a whole lot more you can do. And you're like, what could I have done? What could we have done? We didn't see the signs. I was like, nah, there were fucking signs, man. There's always signs. Nobody just up and does this shit out of nowhere. But also, very few people bring nooses to school and wave them around, or like be like, licking blades and putting it on their MySpace page like this cunt. Like, it's not that obvious most of the time. You kind of have to be watching out for it. And a lot of people don't want to see it. A lot of people don't want to look at that stuff, Aaron. They don't want to recognize that it's real. They don't want to.
Yeah, that's definitely true, and I think, it's not a good thing. Wexford, as you probably know, has a really bad history and rap of suicides and mad shit like that, which is not great. And it's strange because after the fact, then at first it's like Jesus, what could I have done? I never thought that. No, that fella was some happy chap, and he was this and he was that. And then once the dust settles, then it's like, well, actually, it turns out, that this dude was gay and he couldn't come out, or it was this, or it was that, or, his missus done this, or he found out that. And it's like, you see, there we go now. There's a whole big, if we just pull the thread there now, there's a whole huge thing we can unravel. He didn't just wake up yesterday, walk down and jump off the bridge.
Of course. But that's the easiest thing to understand.
Yeah.
The reason anyone would do that, as far as I understand them, obviously it's a bigger conversation for better qualified people than us. But the reason somebody would do that is because they've run out of options.
Yeah.
That there's no other way out. And I feel that an atmosphere in a place like Wexford, not talking shit about the town, but there seems to be a lot of no way outs. A lot of like, well, this is it then. And I'm like, there's a whole world out there. But the culture of the town is kind of like, it's brilliant, it's the best place, we're the best, everything's here, all your rents are here, your whole life is here. Sure, where else would you be? Where else would you be? What would you be doing if you were there? what's wrong with Wexford? You know, while
Yep.
also the undercurrent of like, who do you think you are, fucking being better, going off and doing stuff? Who do you think you are, big man, going to Dublin or fucking going? Where are you going? You know, there's a whole lot of places like Wexford all over. It just happens that we're from Wexford and we know it real well, and we
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
the people that have died. Like, I'm sure, you know, in both of our cohorts of social groups, we know we can name fucking a dozen people each that have died over the last 20 years. The no way out thing tends to be a big leader in successful suicides. Happens mostly in men. They're the ones who bubble under the pressure and then burst. Women tend to relate a little bit easier to each other, and there's a lot more warning signs. But like you said, nobody wakes up in the morning and goes, right, I'm going to jump over the bridge today, out of nowhere for no reason. There are signs, and I think they're not as overt as Allan Menzies, you know, cutting himself and roaring about it and then stabbing somebody and all that stuff. But like, if they're as overt as that, as what he was doing, and still nothing was done, what hope as a normal motherfucker got, who's a small bit overextended on his mortgage, who's like, after getting his hours cut in work, and like is in a shitty relationship with a woman who maybe trying to get like extra money for the child out of him, and just a lot of pressures. A lot of it is usually about money or lifestyle or, you know, living arrangements, and pressure. No way out. Pressure. Fuck it. Do you know? Consistent, unrelenting pressure tends to result in really shitty things like that. So where was Allan Menzies' pressure coming from? Because there was pressure.
Yeah.
We maybe couldn't see the pressure, but like the results of it were evident. Like being squashed by a giant invisible elephant. Like, you just see a motherfucker like flat in the ground with his guts pouring out. It was like, what the fuck is that? Like, there's obviously something squashing him. Like,
Yeah, like he had the issue with, you know, being alone or being bullied or whatever, being the bully and all this shit. But there was definitely there was definitely a lot more, I think, to what he went through or what wasn't done for him, maybe, that just fucked with him.
a vast untold story, I'd say. But it's not untold in its uniqueness, because there are loads of other people who have killed people who their stories are very well known and very well documented in the aftermath, and they all end up with the same result. So we can only presume or surmise or you know, guess that this guy ended up with the story that ends similarly as many others, and we have all those many other stories. So if the same shit happened to them and it resulted in the same way, I'm guessing the same thing happened to this guy. I say childhood trauma, neglect, abuse, undiagnosed mental health conditions, psychiatric conditions, neglect in his teenage years, and, you know, further.
This is the result.
Yeah, like, that's what fucking happens, man. Shit in, shit out. Whatever you put, like we said, you put them bad fucking volts into that electric porridge, and shit like this happens. Like, that's what he just got, the bad volts. Like,
Yeah.
do you know?
It's a wild, and I didn't realize. I guess closing thoughts. I didn't realize till I started to look into this case how many similar cases there is, in not in just the sense of what you said of like people who've been failed by, I guess, at every turn, but also the amount of
vampire motherfuckers.
yeah, like the amount of people who like seem to latch onto these just like fucking wild ideas of, you know, things like vampires and Satan and demons. And, you know, look, I know like religion is a thing, and that's fucking, if you really break it down, like, it is wild in itself. But it's crazy how many of these young people, like, just like I didn't know there was like vampire cults and stuff.
Yeah.
And
There's
man,
something like deep connection in the human subconscious with like exsanguination and what the blood means. Like, the blood is the life. Like, do you know? I mean, we're not even going to touch into like adrenochrome and shit like that, but like, there's a reason that's a fucking thing. Like, be it a meme or like a, you know, a leak from, you know, dark forces that have told us about this thing. We know that fucking, I don't know, the Clintons are drinking kids' blood and all. It's a meme. It's out in the world now. Everybody knows. Everyone's heard of adrenochrome. 2 years ago, maybe they wouldn't have. There's something in the blood, man. There's something in the blood that has power, and be it like an actual physical power, like you're taking somebody's life force, or be it like an allegorical power, like the bloodlines this summer. The bloodlines, like having powerful blood, means that like your ancestor, you have an unbroken line from a very ancient family member who had knowledge, who passes the knowledge down to your family. So the blood is important because you get the knowledge to be able to then control other people through finance and politics and all that stuff. Like vampirism is possibly the allegory for generational knowledge, power, and wealth. And then these people take other people into their families and use them, like take in, like a billionaire would take in all these people and use their life force to labor for him as he like sucks up all of the fruits of their labors and makes himself more wealthy and more powerful, and then they die off younger because they're working real hard in the factories, and he's like living, all these billionaires in the fucking 20s living until they were 99 years of age when the average life expectancy was like 39 or something. Like, so like, is it all a big allegory, and the people nowadays are dying for some kind of autonomy, they're dying for some kind of power, some kind of ability to control the elements of their life that seem uncontrollable, and they just like water it down to like, oh, if I drink somebody's blood and I pray to like a goat's head. But the cunts that are actually have the power, that are actually doing the thing, are doing it in a much more refined and a much more functional way. It's just, this is the Chinese whispers version of what you should do. So they're like, you know, drinking blood and doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's true, and there's definitely something to that. And then obviously, I think, you know, there's people who have underlying issues and different things happen with them, and then, like I said, they latch on to these ideas. Like for us, probably as quote unquote normal people, something like
No.
s-
Go on,
something
yeah,
like
I'll take it. Go on.
something like that, you know, kind of seems like mad foreign. Like to think that, you know, I could latch on to an idea of like, yeah, if I go down now and kill that old man's cat, and I'm going to drink its blood and all and stab it a heap of times, and that's like my religion, I suppose. That's my way of thinking. That's my, yeah, this is what I should be doing. This is what I'm here to do. This is good for me. It's going to get me where I need to go. Uh, it's just I don't know. It's a mad, and not look. It's not just with the whole vampire blood thing. There is so many different things
Yeah,
that I'm sure we could type in anything. Like you
anything.
probably type in dog shit killer or something, and there's probably something.
The icicle killer or whatever. Uh, I think it's that thing about like killing the cat and then but like praying to Satan that the lotto numbers will come up or whatever. Like, I think that's just a little bit more like objectively visceral, and a little bit more like obviously brutal.
Hmm.
But to me, it has the absolute same connotations as like blessing yourself before a plane takes
Yeah.
off.
Yep.
You know, it's just like you're not letting any blood out. But what you are doing is calling upon the energy of a 33-year-old Jew that was brutally tortured by the Romans on a cross for a whole weekend. And they cut him up in bits. Blood came out. They caught the blood in a cup and they drank it. They shared it around all. They even fucking broke off pieces of bread and pretended it was his body and ate it like cannibals. Do you know? And then when the cunt came back to life, he came around and said, "It's me, I'm back." It's like, "No, man, we killed you and ate you and drank your blood." And he's like, "Check it out, man. Put your fucking hand into my side. There's a big scar." And people were like putting their fucking arms into his body, putting their fingers through the holes in his hands. Like, they don't have to actually do that thing on
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
plane. But when
Yep.
they do that and you've fucking north, south, east and west on the plane, what you're doing is evoking whatever, you know, dark magical power that image concocts. I think these lads are sacrificing cats inside the road and going, "Oh, I love a new Les Paul guitar." Like, those guys are just taking a more hands-on approach to
Mhm.
that. But
Yeah.
like
And
blessing yourself is just as fucking. We've all seen that Mel Gibson movie. It's just as brutal. It's a brutal effigy of a terrible, torturous, almost vampiric event, like the last 4 days of Jesus. pretty much like a fucking cannibal festival Christmas.
Yeah,
Drink
and I
my
always
body,
found that.
eat my body, drink my blood, like stick your hand into my side, like violate a corpse, like while you're drinking my blood and eating me, like same shit, man.
Yeah, I've always found that fascinating. There's a couple of people in my closer family that are I wouldn't say mad religious in the sense of like preaching it here or anything, but just kind of old school, like in their late 70s now, and it's all still very don't go to mass or anything anymore, but there's still a sense of like, oh yeah, I say me prayers to the Sacred Heart every night, and I
The Sacred
you
Heart,
know
it's a fucking picture of a human heart covered in thorns, wearing a crown, bleeding all over the fucking kitchen in a hologram. And they say prayers to it, bro. Like, what's the difference between that and fucking some lad cutting out that 90-year-old woman's heart and putting it on the ground with crosses all
yeah,
around it?
and
It's just the dude who did the 90-year-old woman's heart was just a bit more hands on. Whereas we're fucking saying prayers and rocking back and over, throwing our eyes back over a fucking giant statue of a ripped, a fucking GQ model up on a cross, and we're saying prayers to him. And then at the end, we all queue up and we have a little slice of the motherfucker before we go home for dinner. Like, what's the difference? Do you know?
mad.
It's
It is
somewhere in
mad.
there, that sanguination, the thing in the blood, the body in the blood, keeping that shit alive, keeping that body, that powerful person in you, the blood of that person in you, like to keep that in. There's something in there.
And again, that's another tangent. It's something that, like, yeah, man,
Absolutely.
that's a big one. It's
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
fucking,
Let's take down religion. It's only 20 to 1 in the morning. Boom, let's do it. But
yeah,
seriously, like when I see, like I don't go to mass, I haven't gone to mass in years. I was a Roman Catholic raised and all that stuff. And I see motherfuckers doing that. I'm like, you're beatifying the torture of a Jew. Do you know? The
yep,
brutal torture.
yeah. And I think that's the part with that whole thing that's like kind of glossed over, I suppose, for the for the everyday, like, oh, you grew up in Ireland, your granny goes to mass, she might drag you to mass every Sunday, blah
Yeah.
blah, and you just kind of a lot of it is glossed over. I never mind that.
Because you have to
It's
wear nice clothes. You have to wear your best clothes, and you have to give money to
yeah,
witness
send
the
baskets around to collect money.
to send baskets around to collect money, and you have to wear your nicest clothes to celebrate a recreation of the consecration of a 33-year-old man who said he was the son of God, and everybody disagreed, and they brutally tortured him and like nailed him to a cross and cut him open, and then we drank his blood and ate his body, and we have to wear our nicest clothes and pay for the privilege. Like when you put it like that,
Mad.
Allan Menzies doing that shit is not so crazy, like,
Yeah, when you really break it down to it, some of those other stories don't seem as like, because I think it seems like another world where it's like, oh, yes, these lads who were into Satanism and all, that's a whole
Yeah.
mad underground world. And it's like, well, the shit that's
Sacrificing a
not,
goat and like letting the blood drip out onto an altar in a cemetery on a Saturday night, and then drinking the blood and going, yeah, and listening to fucking, I don't know, Pantera or something like that. You're like, what's the difference in that and dressing up all in beige, wearing lovely sandals, and then like queuing up really peacefully, and then eating a slice of a 33-year-old Jewish man who was tortured by the Romans? Like, it's same to me.
yeah,
It's
it
just the
is,
lads on
yeah.
Saturday night are actually taking a bit of a fucking hand in part in actually dispatching the goat.
It's mad.
Mad.
Um, I'm gonna stop myself now, because if not, I'm gonna fucking get you into another
I like
4 hour tangent on.
I was here with you. I said I'd keep going until we ran the arse off it, and I think dispar-
Yeah, there's
disparaging the Catholic Church is probably the place to stop.
yeah, we're at that point now.
Yeah,
And it's that time in the night where it ends up going from that to God knows what.
the silly. Yeah.
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 It's been a pleasure.
Good crack, man.
It's been good fun, and it's been quite eye opening as well. I suppose every time I have a conversation with someone, as well spoken and knowledgeable, you hear things, you get told things that maybe you thought you knew, and you're like, fuck yeah, I never thought of it that way. Um,
I'll be honest with you. Some of the things I said tonight, like I opened up the hatch in my head and said, like, universe, give me the vocabulary in order to explain these concepts, and it just came out. So, and that happens a lot. Like we were talking about fucking, Aaliyah coming and saying to you at night time, do the thing, do the command, the thing. Like I'm pure all about that flow state, man, trying to find those answers and stuff. So like, it's thanks for letting me have the opportunity.
Yeah, you were definitely on it tonight, anyway.
Yeah, it's good. Like, it's good crack.
For I guess for the future, then, what can people expect from you soon? What's anything to talk about, or that you can announce? Anything big coming? Anything exciting?
Well, I mean, I have a friend coming over later on to watch a film, and if he fucking doesn't like it,
what film?
if he doesn't like it, I tell you what he'll fucking get now. No, I have loads of episodes, man. I've been recording a shitload of episodes. I have an episode on the mystery of the pyramids, some fucking
nice.
dark magic, some crazy maths, some alternate history, some a retelling of what we think the human race's past was like, and it's sitting there in Egypt, staring, laughing in our faces. Another episode then on a guy called Barry Seal, who used to run drugs for the government and the Clintons from South America back to Arkansas, and it was portrayed by Tom Cruise in the film American Made. So it's that kind of story.
Yes.
Fucking savage, such deep roots. Like that movie only barely scratched the surface. Like, so much stuff, like Iran Contra and Reagan's drug administration and the Bush family. We're doing an episode on the Bush family. So deep. But Barry Seal is in the can, and did one there last week about Operation Mockingbird, which is the CIA's infiltration of the mainstream media and the continued and relentless and almost immoral bombardment of propaganda on the world consuming media. Really, really fucking deep ties there as well. Super linked up. Loads of names that you recognise from all the fucking deep government stuff. Alan Dulles and all these CIA OSS guys, and just basically how it all pans out, how it all shakes out. And then rakes a true crime, like I said, Israel Keys. We got the Keepers, that one where the nun got killed by the church because she was about to rat them all out for being pedos. Did one on what was that lad from yesterday? Chris Watts killed his wife and 2 kids.
That's a mad story.
Fucking terrible, man. Another Netflix documentary. And I did one on Saturday about, can I think of it now? So many fucking things going through my brain, man. All these things you have to remember. About the Menendez brothers. Oh my God, what a fucking that's another story of abuse, man. That fucking bring a tear to a glass eye. And those 2 motherfuckers like shot their parents, and everybody went, "Oh, what a pair of bastards, jail forever," and no questions were asked. Like, it's so mad story, crazy trial.
Yeah, some of the footage from the trial and stuff was just.
But it was the first of its kind to be filmed. Like, nobody would film trials before, and these 2 lads, 1993, the trial started, and it was on Court TV, and you got to watch them give this fucking harrowing fucking testimony about like what their dad did to them, sexual abuse and all this kind of stuff. And by the end of it, you're nearly like, yeah, I'm glad you shot the cunt. Crazy episodes. I've loads of swapcasts like this one with other great creators, and loads of topics talked about. So, subscribe anywhere you get it. Those Conspiracy Guys is the show. There's a website, thoseconspiracyguys.com, and there's loads of extra stuff in the Patreon, loads of videos and stuff like this as well. So it's just fucking content on content on content. I just have to wear different hats and get it all out. So I'm in recording, researching mode, and then I have to change to editing mode, which is really laborious. You know yourself.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how do you get the time to fucking do all that research and everything? Where's where's the best place for someone maybe who's new to you or has heard bits and bobs to, I suppose, interact with you as much as you possibly could interact with so many people?
Well, I'm kind of kicked off a lot of the social media because I'm putting out misinformation and disinformation, as it's called nowadays. I don't fuck with Facebook or Twitter much anymore. I've deleted them all off my phone. I deleted Twitter and TikTok for my New Year's resolution, and I'm saving 11 hours a week. So, best thing I ever done. I spend a lot of time on Instagram. If you want to DM or interact with any of the stuff, like Instagram is probably the place I'm on the most. I know it's Facebook too. Don't get at me. It's fucking, it works. Visuals, easy. The comments, you can delete them if they're fucking dickheads. Block them, easy. Way easier than Twitter. It's good fun. Instagram. Or there's a Gilded server, because Discord came out and they started fucking cancelling all of my mates that all have conspiracy shows, like Charlie Robinson and Greg Carlwood and all these guys that had like big communities on Discord. And then overnight, Discord just went pa-punk and just deleted everybody. And you're like, oh, fuck. And I had thousands of people in this server. And I had to move them to a different app before we all got, like, depersoned. So we're on this new app now called Gilded, which is like a Discord clone. And people go in there and hang out, man. We chat about all this. Like, I'm going to put this show up on the Patreon, and any of the topics, when I go back and I listen through it. So when I'm editing, I edit it like very meticulously, take out all the gaps and mistakes and do it, real. But I also take note of all the things that we talked about and all the stuff that we referenced and all of that stuff. And then I put that into Gilded in the forums. And if there's anything you have to comment or you have links or you want to start the discussion, there's now thousands of people in there having the chance as well about all this. So, yeah, so it's a fucking ecosystem of information, It's all in
there. Like I said, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope we can do it again sometime.
I hope so too. You're going to come out to Mayo, I hope, and fucking Rob and Eamon are going to come out too. Should we do a big 4-way? Or we might do a live show, your show and their show and my show in Wexford sometime.
That'd be class. Yeah, that'd be class. There'll be some shit out there.
I'm heading over to the UK now at the end of this month and the end of April as well to do a bunch of shows, and they're all sold out.
Yeah, I've seen that. They're all sold out, yeah?
Yeah, almost, yeah. So, tickets are going hot. But yeah, Glasgow, Liverpool, Newcastle, Birmingham, and big rooms, good times. I mean, there's going to be Ukraine chat, there's going to be propaganda chat, like COVID's over. So, but the shit I talked about in London last October is happening right now.
Yeah.
The fourth turning and the end of modern civilization, the war, the economic downturn. Like it's I have to be afraid of what they say at these, because the next thing they're like, oh shit.
That's what I was going to say. At what point do you become a target for, like, shut this fella up, will you, fuck's sake?
Yeah, I'm already kicked off YouTube, Vimeo, Discord.
That's mad to
me. Loads of platforms. Just like, no, don't want that. But I'm not like, it's not like I'm special or anything. It's like anybody talking about this stuff at all. It's big or small. You're like, no, thumbs down for you. It's a weird world we're living in, man. And yet you can talk about fucking, any of this stuff as long as you like. Or you can go on and slander people and go on and fucking say anything you want on TikTok or make up bullshit or, doctor videos and say they're the real news, and nobody ever stops you. But if you say one thing about fucking, I won't say the keywords because they get you. You're tagged already, I think. But yeah, look, man, those conspiracy guys is the show, and I have fun. It's my full-time job. I really enjoy it, and it's like a passion.
Living the dream.
It's not easy holding all this stuff. When in 2014 or 15, it was just fun, and now it's like, oh shit, this is real life. It'd be like being a true crime or a horror movie enthusiast, and then finding out like, oh shit, I'm living in a horror movie. Like this is, I am.
Yeah, this is like.
Do I run out the front door or up the stairs? Like this is. For years, I've been going, man, they're out to get you. They're gonna fucking make a disease and kill everybody, and then they're gonna start a war, and the economy's gonna crash. But it was all like off in the distance, and now I'm like pulling up on it in the car, going, "This is just like a tiny plume of smoke 4 years ago," and now it's like, bodies inside of the road. You're like, "Oh Christ!" But yeah, we should do a live show, man. That's just to throw it out there for the crack.
Yeah, that'd be class.
Wexford Podcasters Unite.
Yeah, that would be good. That's something we need to iron out. For anyone listening, it's the usual. The website is ClassHorrorCast.com. I'm on all social medias for now, but the only one I use is like you. I basically only use Instagram.
Yeah.
Think Facebook was shite, can't be bothered. Kept getting pulled down for stuff and getting all these stupid fucking, not even copyright things, always violence and
Yeah, content.
all
Yeah,
this
like it's
crap.
history, bitch.
Yes,
Yeah.
crap. Anytime, and I mean, I was talking about stupid shit like top 5 kills in Leprechaun, and I'm getting pulled off Facebook. So I was like, yeah, Instagram is probably the main place, and anywhere you get podcasts. Gordo, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much,
I
mate.
can't wait to do it again, and yeah, keep an eye out for a Wexford live show at some point.